The champagne glass shattered against marble floor, and everyone turned to watch Lena Hartwell's humiliation unfold in real time. Her ex-fiancé stood there grinning, his arm wrapped around her younger sister, the woman he'd been sleeping with for 6 months while planning their wedding. The entire restaurant had gone silent, waiting to see her break. That's when she did something nobody expected. She walked straight toward the most powerful man in the room and sat down at his table without asking. What happened next changed everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens when a broke event planner makes a deal with a billionaire who doesn't believe in love anymore. The mistake Lena made was believing tonight would be different. She'd walked into Aurelio's, the kind of Manhattan restaurant where reservations required both money and connections. Wearing a dress she'd bought on sale 3 years ago, and shoes that pinched her feet with every step. Her best friend Maya had insisted she come out, insisted she stop hiding in her cramped studio apartment surrounded by unpaid invoices and rejection emails. "You need to get back out there," Maya had said over the phone that afternoon. "It's been 4 months since the wedding got called off. You can't let him win." Lena had almost stayed home anyway. But something about another Friday night alone, eating takeout while refreshing her bank account and praying the numbers would somehow be different, had felt worse than facing the world. She should have trusted her instincts. The restaurant hummed with quiet wealth, the kind where conversations stayed low and laughter never got too loud. Crystal chandeliers threw soft light across white tablecloths. Waiters moved like ghosts between tables, refilling wine glasses before they got halfway empty. The whole place smelled like money, the kind Lena used to think she'd have someday when her event planning business finally took off. That was before everything fell apart. Maya had texted 10 minutes ago saying she was running late, traffic on the bridge, stuck behind an accident, be there soon. Lena sat alone at their table near the windows, watching couples and business associates share expensive meals while she nursed a water with lemon because even the cheapest wine here cost $40. She was scrolling through her phone, pretending to look busy, when she heard the laugh. That laugh. Her entire body went cold. Lena looked up slowly, already knowing what she'd see, but hoping somehow she was wrong. And there, 3 tables away, sat Marcus Chen, her ex-fiancé, the man she'd planned to marry exactly 4 months and 6 days ago, with his arm around her sister, her younger sister, Emma. The same Emma who'd been her maid of honor, the same Emma who'd helped her pick out wedding invitations and taste test cake samples. The same Emma who'd looked her in the eyes 2 weeks before the wedding and said, "I need to tell you something," before destroying Lena's entire life with one confession. They hadn't seen her yet. Marcus was leaning close to Emma, whispering something that made her giggle and press her hand against his chest in that performative way that said, "Look how in love we are." Emma wore a black dress that probably cost more than Lena's monthly rent. Her hair swept up in an elegant twist that showed off the diamond earrings Marcus had clearly bought her. The same man who'd told Lena they needed to be financially practical about engagement rings. Lena's hands started shaking. She set her phone down on the table before she could drop it, her breath coming too fast. This wasn't supposed to happen. Maya had checked. Marcus and Emma were supposed to be in the Hamptons this weekend, far away from the city, far away from anywhere Lena might accidentally run into them. She should leave, stand up, walk out, pretend she'd never seen them. But her body wouldn't move. 4 months ago, Lena had walked into her own apartment, the one she'd shared with Marcus for 2 years, to find him sitting on their couch with Emma, both of them looking guilty and terrified and somehow relieved all at once. "We didn't mean for this to happen," Marcus had said, like that made it better. Like accidentally falling in love with your fiancé's sister was something that just occurred naturally, like catching a cold. Emma had cried, actually cried, tears running down her face while she apologized over and over. "I'm so sorry, Lena. I never wanted to hurt you, but we can't help how we feel." Lena had stood there in the doorway, still holding groceries she'd bought to cook Marcus his favorite dinner, trying to understand how the 2 people she trusted most in the world had somehow become strangers. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal, though that had gutted her. The worst part was how everyone had reacted afterward. Their mother had actually suggested Lena be the bigger person and attend the new wedding Marcus and Emma were planning. Her father had said these things happened, that Lena was being dramatic, that Emma was still her sister and family came first. Family came first. The words had echoed in Lena's head for weeks, while she tried to hold together a business that was hemorrhaging clients and money. Turns out most of her event planning contacts had come through Marcus's finance industry connections, and after the breakup, those connections evaporated. Suddenly, venues weren't returning her calls. Vendors wanted payment up front instead of on net 30 terms. Clients who'd been definitely interested went silent. Within 2 months, she'd burned through her savings. Within 3, she'd maxed out 2 credit cards just covering basic business expenses. By month 4, she was dodging calls from her landlord and eating ramen for dinner most nights because protein cost too much. And now here she was, watching her ex-fiancé and her sister enjoy a meal that probably cost more than Lena made in a week. "Lena?" The voice cut through her spiral. She looked up to find Emma standing beside her table, Marcus hovering a few feet behind looking uncomfortable. No. 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 "Oh my gosh, what are you doing here?" Emma's smile was bright and fake, the kind she used at family gatherings when their aunt started asking about everyone's love lives. "This is such a crazy coincidence." It wasn't a coincidence. Manhattan had 8 million people and hundreds of expensive restaurants. But of course, they'd end up here, at the same place, on the same night. The universe had a sick sense of humor. "Maya and I are having dinner," Lena managed, her voice sounding strange in her own ears. "That's so nice." Emma glanced back at Marcus, who gave a weak wave. "We're just celebrating. Marcus got promoted to senior vice president. Isn't that amazing?" The words landed like punches. Promoted, celebrating. Everything was working out perfectly for them, while Lena's life crumbled. "Congratulations," Lena said flatly. Emma's smile flickered. "You look good. How's the business going?" How's the business going? Like she didn't know. Like their mother hadn't told her that Lena was drowning, that she might have to shut everything down, that she'd spent last Tuesday crying in a Starbucks bathroom because a client had canceled a $20,000 contract. "Fine," Lena lied. "Really good, actually." "Oh, that's wonderful." Emma's voice went up half an octave, the way it always did when she was lying too. "I was worried after, everything, but I'm so glad you're doing well. We should get coffee sometime, catch up properly." We should get coffee, like they were old friends who drifted apart naturally, not sisters torn apart by betrayal. "Sure," Lena said, knowing it would never happen. Marcus cleared his throat. "We should get back to our table. Food's probably getting cold." "Right, yes." Emma touched Lena's shoulder, actually touched her, and Lena had to fight not to flinch away. "It was so good seeing you. Let's definitely make plans soon." They walked away, back to their table, back to their celebration and expensive wine and perfect life together. Lena sat frozen, her hands pressed flat against the table to keep them from shaking. The restaurant felt too bright suddenly, too loud. Every conversation around her seemed to pause, people glancing over with that particular kind of curiosity reserved for watching someone else's private moment of humiliation. Her phone buzzed. "Maya, so sorry. Accident is bad, traffic not moving. Might be another 30 minutes. Order without me." 30 more minutes. Alone. With Marcus and Emma 3 tables away, probably talking about her right now, probably pitying her. Lena needed to leave. Stand up, put money on the table for the water, walk out with whatever dignity she had left. But then Emma's laugh rang out again, that high, performative laugh, and Lena heard Marcus say something about dodging a bullet before their voices dropped too low to make out the rest. Dodging a bullet. Her. She was the bullet he had dodged. Something inside Lena cracked. Not broke. She'd already been broken 4 months ago. This was different. This was the moment when all the sadness and shame transformed into something sharper. She stood up before she could think it through. Her legs moved on autopilot, carrying her across the restaurant floor while her brain screamed at her to stop, to turn around, to not make this worse. But her body had other plans. The entire restaurant seemed to track her movement, dozens of well-dressed people pausing mid-conversation to watch the woman in the sale rack dress walk with purpose toward the back corner where the most expensive tables were located, where Damien Ashford sat alone, reading something on his phone with the kind of intense focus that made most people afraid to interrupt him. Lena had seen him before, of course. Everyone in New York had seen Damien Ashford at some point, in newspapers, on business news channels, walking past in a blur of expensive suits and cold efficiency. The youngest self-made billionaire in the city, CEO of Ashford Industries, venture capitalist, real estate mogul, and according to tabloids, the most eligible bachelor in Manhattan, despite the fact that he never dated anyone and had a reputation for being impossible to approach. He was also, coincidentally, sitting at the table directly in Marcus and Emma's line of sight. Lena didn't let herself think. Thinking would mean stopping, and stopping would mean turning back. And turning back would mean Marcus was right. She was pathetic and desperate, and someone worth dodging like a bullet. She walked straight up to Damien Ashford's table and sat down in the empty chair across from him. For 3 full seconds, nothing happened. Damien looked up slowly from his phone, his dark eyes meeting hers with an expression that gave away absolutely nothing. He was younger than she expected, maybe 33, 34, with sharp features and black hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it too many times. His suit probably cost more than her car, back when she'd had a car. "Can I help you?" His voice was low, controlled, with just enough edge to let her know she'd made a terrible mistake. Behind her, Lena could feel every eye in the restaurant watching, including Marcus and Emma. "I need you to pretend you know me," she said quietly. "Just for 2 minutes, please." Damien's expression didn't change. "Excuse me? My ex-fiancé is here with my sister. The sister he cheated on me with. They're watching us right now." The words came out in a rush, desperate and humiliating. "I just need you to act like we're having dinner together. 2 minutes. Then I'll leave and never bother you again." She waited for him to call security, to tell her to leave, to look at her with the same pity everyone else had been giving her for months. Instead, Damien set his phone down on the table and leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena. Lena Hartwell." "Well, Lena Hartwell." He gestured to the chair she was already sitting in. "Would you like to join me for dinner?" His voice carried just enough to reach nearby tables. Lena saw the shift happen in real time, conversations stopping, heads turning, people recognizing exactly who had just invited this random woman to dine with him. Lena's courage faltered. "I don't have much money." "Did I ask you to pay?" Damien's tone stayed level, but something almost resembling amusement flickered in his eyes. "Sit. Order whatever you want. We'll give them something to talk about." He raised his hand slightly and a waiter materialized beside their table as if he'd been waiting for the signal. "The lady will be joining me," Damien said. "Bring us a bottle of the Chateau Margaux 2015. The waiter's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign that this was unusual, before he nodded and disappeared. Lena sat there, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. This was insane. She'd just sat down at a billionaire's table and asked him to pretend to know her, and instead of having her thrown out, he was ordering wine that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "You're shaking," Damien observed. "I don't know what I'm doing," Lena admitted. "This was stupid. I should go." "You asked for 2 minutes." He glanced at his watch, something sleek and expensive that caught the light. "You've used 30 seconds. Don't waste the rest." The waiter returned with the wine, going through an elaborate opening ceremony that Lena barely registered. When he poured a small amount for Damien to taste, Damien waved it away. "She'll decide if it's acceptable," he said, nodding toward Lena. The waiter looked startled but recovered quickly, offering Lena the glass. She had no idea how to properly taste wine. She took a sip, and it was the best thing she'd ever put in her mouth, smooth and complex in ways she didn't have words for. "It's perfect," she managed. The waiter poured 2 glasses and retreated. Damien lifted his wine, studying the color in the candlelight. "So, your ex-fiancé cheated on you with your sister, and you thought sitting at my table would accomplish what exactly?" Lena felt her face heat. "I wanted him to think I'd moved on, that I was fine." "Are you fine?" "No." The word came out before she could stop it. "I'm broke, and my business is failing, and my family thinks I'm being dramatic because I won't forgive them. And seeing them here celebrating while I'm falling apart?" She stopped, horrified at herself. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this." "I asked," Damien pointed out. He took a sip of wine, his expression unreadable. "How broke?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "You said you're broke. How bad is it?" Lena should have lied, should have brushed it off, maintained some dignity. But something about the way he asked, direct and matter-of-fact like he was asking about the weather, made her tell the truth. I have about $300 in my checking account. I owe $12,000 on credit cards. My landlord's threatening eviction, and I'll probably have to close my business by the end of the month because I can't afford to keep it running. Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then, what kind of business? Event planning, corporate functions, galas, fundraisers. I was good at it. She laughed bitterly. Or I thought I was. Turns out most of my success came from my ex-fiance's connections. Once he was gone, so were the clients. Hartwell events. Damien said it like a statement, not a question. Lena stared at him. You know my company? I know of it. You organized the Mitchell Foundation Gala 2 years ago. My colleague attended. Said it was the best run event he'd been to in years. Something painful twisted in Lena's chest. That gala had been her masterpiece, the event that was supposed to launch her into the top tier of New York planners. She'd worked 18-hour days for 3 months to make it perfect. That was before everything fell apart, she said quietly. Falling apart and being broken aren't the same thing. Damien set his wine glass down. One is temporary, the other is a choice. That's easy to say when you're a billionaire. You think I didn't fall apart first? Something hard flashed in his eyes. I built my company from nothing while raising a daughter by myself after my wife died. I know what falling apart looks like, Ms. Hartwell. I also know the difference between people who get back up and people who stay down. The words should have felt harsh, but they didn't. They felt true in a way that made Lena's throat tight. Your 2 minutes are up, Damien said, though his tone suggested he wasn't actually asking her to leave. Are you staying for dinner, or was this just a performance? Lena glanced over her shoulder. Marcus and Emma were both staring at their table, no longer even pretending to have a private conversation. Emma's face had gone pale. Marcus looked genuinely confused, like he couldn't comprehend how Lena had ended up dining with Damien Ashford. Good. I'm staying, Lena said, turning back to face Damien, if the offer still stands. It stands. He picked up the menu and handed it to her. Order whatever you want, and stop looking at them. You're here with me now. Act like it. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of expensive food Lena barely tasted, and conversation that felt surreal. Damien asked questions about her business, specific, intelligent questions that made it clear he actually understood event planning despite probably never organizing an event himself. He listened when she talked, didn't interrupt, and occasionally offered observations that were sharp enough to hurt, but accurate enough that she couldn't argue. You relied too much on one source of clients, he said at one point. Diversification isn't just for investment portfolios. I know that now, Lena replied. Knowing it now doesn't help you. What are you going to do differently? I don't know. Assuming I even stay in business long enough to do anything differently. Damien was quiet for a moment, his fingers tapping against his wine glass. What if I offered you a job? Lena nearly choked on her water. What? My company hosts 12 major events a year. Investor conferences, charity galas, product launches. We currently contract with Harris and Associates for event planning. He said the name with clear distaste. They're competent, but uninspired. I've been considering a change. You're offering me a contract? Lena's heart was racing. Based on one dinner where I ambushed you? I'm offering you an opportunity to pitch for it. Put together a proposal for our annual charity gala in December. If it's good, you're hired. If it's not, he shrugged. At least you tried. It was more than Lena had hoped for. More than she deserved after essentially stalking him at his table. Why are you helping me? She asked. Damien's expression shifted into something almost resembling a smile. Not quite, but close. Maybe I like the idea of your ex-fiancé watching you succeed after he wrote you off. Maybe I think you have potential despite your current situation. Maybe I just enjoy making decisions that confuse people. He stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. Does it matter? I guess not. He pulled out a business card and set it on the table. Send your proposal to my office by Monday. If it's good, we'll talk. If it's not, we'll both forget this dinner happened. Monday? That's 3 days away. Then you should probably start working. Damien picked up his phone and wallet. Thank you for an interesting evening, Ms. Hartwell. I hope your ex-fiancé enjoyed the show. He walked away before she could respond, moving through the restaurant with the kind of confidence that made people step aside automatically. Lena sat alone at the table, staring at the business card like it might disappear if she blinked. Damien Ashford, CEO, Ashford Industries Direct Line, number. Her phone buzzed. Maya, finally moving, be there in 10. Please tell me you waited. Lena looked around the restaurant. Marcus and Emma had already left, probably slipped out while she was talking to Damien, unable to handle watching her have dinner with a man so far out of their league that they couldn't even comprehend it. She picked up Damien's business card and slipped it into her purse. Then she stood up, left cash for her water, and walked out of Aurelio's with her head higher than it had been in months. Maybe she was still broke. Maybe her business was still failing. Maybe her family still thought she was being dramatic. But for the first time since her life had fallen apart, Lena felt like maybe, just maybe, she could build something new from the pieces. Otosas. Maya showed up to Lena's apartment at 7 the next morning with coffee and bagels, refusing to accept that Lena was fine after texting her the night before about what happened. Let me get this straight, Maya said, pacing across Lena's tiny studio while Lena sat on her secondhand couch in pajamas. You sat down at Damien Ashford's table, asked him to fake a dinner with you, and instead of calling security, he offered you a potential contract? That's what happened, Lena confirmed, sipping coffee that was already cold. That's insane. That's literally insane. Maya stopped pacing. Wait, you're not actually going to put together a proposal, are you? Lena, that's Ashford Industries. Their charity gala last year raised $7 million. You can't just throw together some Pinterest board and call it a pitch. I know that. Do you? Because you look very calm for someone who has 3 days to create a proposal for one of the biggest events in Manhattan. Lena pulled out her laptop, a 4-year-old MacBook that took 3 minutes to start up, and opened a blank document. I have to try. If I don't, I'm closing my business anyway. At least this way I have a chance. Maya sat down beside her, her expression softening. Okay, then let's do this properly. What do you need? Everything. I need to research past Ashford galas, figure out their typical budget range, understand their donor base, create a theme that's impressive but not overdone. Lena trailed off, the enormity of the task hitting her. This is impossible. Nothing's impossible. You're just scared. Maya opened her own laptop. I'll start digging into Ashford Industries' past events. You focus on the creative vision. We've got 3 days. We can sleep when you're hired. They worked through the entire weekend. Lena barely left her apartment, surviving on coffee and whatever food Maya brought over. Her studio apartment became a war room, papers spread across every surface, laptop glowing in the corner, inspiration boards taped to the walls. The more Lena researched Ashford Industries, the more she understood what Damien had meant about Harris and Associates being competent but uninspired. Their events were beautiful but generic, elegant ballrooms, classical music, standard auction formats. Everything followed a formula that was safe and predictable. Damien Ashford didn't strike her as someone who appreciated safe and predictable. By Sunday night, Lena had something, not perfect, but real. A vision for a charity gala that would actually stand out in a city saturated with identical fundraisers. The theme, Invisible Impact. Instead of another black tie dinner, she proposed transforming the venue into an immersive experience showcasing the real people and communities Ashford's foundation supported. No auction items from luxury brands, actual items created by foundation beneficiaries. No generic speeches, storytelling from the people who'd been helped. No standard ballroom, an industrial space transformed to reflect both the polish of Ashford Industries and the raw reality of the work they funded. It was risky. It broke every rule of traditional gala planning. It was also exactly the kind of thing that might actually impress Damien Ashford. This is either brilliant or career suicide, Maya said, reading over Lena's shoulder at 2 a.m. Monday. Probably both, Lena agreed. But I'm sending it anyway. She attached the proposal to an email, typed a brief cover letter, and hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she closed her laptop and tried to breathe. The response came 6 hours later, not from Damien, but from someone named Jessica Park, executive assistant to the CEO. Ms. Hartwell, Mr. Ashford has reviewed your proposal. Please arrive at Ashford Industries tomorrow at 2 p.m. for a meeting. Bring detailed budget breakdowns and vendor contacts. Regards, Jessica Park. Lena read the email 4 times, her hands shaking. He wanted a meeting. That meant the proposal hadn't been terrible, or at least not terrible enough to reject outright. She had one shot at this. Tuesday morning, Lena stood in front of her closet, staring at clothes that suddenly all looked cheap and worn. She'd sold most of her professional wardrobe months ago when rent was due, and her bank account was negative. What remained was a collection of pieces that had been nice 3 years ago, but now just looked tired. She chose the best of what she had, a gray pencil skirt and black blouse, and paired them with the same shoes she'd worn to Aurelio's, the ones that pinched her feet. Then she pulled her hair back, did her makeup carefully enough to hide how little she'd slept, and caught the subway to Midtown. Ashford Industries occupied 30 floors of a gleaming tower just off Fifth Avenue. The lobby alone was more impressive than most buildings Lena had ever entered, all marble and steel and towering ceilings that made her feel impossibly small. Security directed her to the executive elevators, which required a special key card. A woman who introduced herself as Jessica met her on the 48th floor. "Mr. Ashford is finishing a call," Jessica said, walking Lena through a maze of glass-walled offices. "He should be ready in a few minutes. Can I get you water? Coffee?" "Water would be great," Lena managed, her throat dry. Jessica led her to a conference room that had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Lena stood at the glass, staring out at the city stretching in every direction, and tried to remember how to breathe. Impressive view. She spun around to find Damien standing in the doorway, dressed in another perfect suit, his expression as unreadable as it had been at dinner. "It's beautiful," Lena said. "It's expensive," Damien corrected, walking into the conference room and closing the door behind him. "Beauty is subjective. Square footage overlooking Central Park is just math." He gestured to the table. "Sit. Let's talk about your proposal." Lena sat, pulling out the printed version she'd brought along with her laptop. Her hands were shaking again, and she pressed them flat against the table to hide it. Damien sat across from her, opening a folder that contained her proposal. He'd made notes in the margins. She could see red pen marks throughout the document. "Your concept is interesting," he said. "Unconventional. My board of directors will hate it." Lena's stomach dropped. "Oh, which is exactly why I'm considering it." Damien looked up from the proposal. "My foundation raises millions every year with events that bore everyone involved. Donors come because it's expected, bid on auction items because it's tax deductible, and leave feeling virtuous but unchanged. Your proposal suggests actually making them uncomfortable." "Making them aware," Lena corrected carefully. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Damien leaned back in his chair. "Walk me through the budget. Your estimate came in 20% under what we typically spend. Either you're dramatically undervaluing services, or you found efficiencies Harris and Associates missed." For the next hour, they went through every line item. Damien asked questions that would have demolished a weaker proposal, poking at assumptions and challenging numbers. But Lena had done her homework. She'd spent the entire weekend researching vendor costs, comparing venue options, building contingency plans. "The industrial venue saves money compared to traditional ballrooms," she explained, pulling up comparison spreadsheets. "Yes, it needs more transformation, but the raw space rental is 60% cheaper. That budget reallocation goes into the experience itself: better storytelling, better food, better impact. And if the weather's bad, the venue you suggested has minimal indoor backup space. Then we embrace it. Provide branded umbrellas, heated outdoor sections, make it part of the narrative. People remember events that challenge them, not events that coddle them." Something that might have been approval flickered across Damien's face. "You've thought this through." "I had 3 days and nothing to lose," Lena said honestly. "If this didn't work, I was closing my business anyway. I figured I might as well take the risk." Damien closed the folder and was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes studying her in that intense way that made her feel like he could see straight through any pretense. "Here's my situation, Ms. Hartwell," he finally said. "My company has a reputation problem. People see us as ruthless, cold, profit-driven, which we are. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but our foundation does real work, and that work gets overshadowed by the perception that I'm an untouchable billionaire who only cares about money." He stood up and walked to the windows, looking out at the city. "I need someone who can change that perception, not with lies or spin, but with something real. Your proposal suggests you might understand how to do that." He turned back to face her. "But organizing one event isn't going to fix your business. You need consistent work, reliable income, actual stability. I know, Lena said quietly. So here's what I'm offering. A contract for 12 events over the next year. The charity gala in December, plus quarterly investor meetings, 2 product launches, and 6 smaller corporate functions. Total contract value, $250,000. The number hit Lena like a physical blow. That was more money than she'd made in the last 2 years combined. That's... She couldn't finish the sentence. More than generous, I know. But there's a condition. Damien walked back to the table and sat down. The charity gala happens in 6 months. Between now and then, you'll need to attend events with me. Donor meetings, social functions, industry gatherings. I need people to see me as someone approachable enough to support a foundation that actually cares. Lena frowned, confused. You want me to organize those events too? No, I want you to attend them with me, as my girlfriend. The room went completely silent. Your... what? Lena wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. My girlfriend, Damien repeated, his tone matter-of-fact. Publicly, for the next 6 months. We attend events together, you help soften my image, and in return, you get the contract plus the credibility of being associated with Ashford Industries. When the charity gala is over and successful, we stage an amicable breakup. You keep all the connections you've made, and your business is solidified. Lena stared at him, trying to process what he was actually suggesting. You want to fake a relationship. I want a mutually beneficial business arrangement that happens to look like a relationship to outside observers. That's insane. That's pragmatic, Damien corrected. You need money and connections. I need to change my public perception before the gala. This solves both problems. By lying to everyone, by creating a narrative that serves us both. I'm not asking you to fall in love with me, Ms. Hartwell. I'm offering you a job that happens to include a performance aspect. Lena's mind raced. This was crazy. This was the kind of thing that happened in romance novels, not real life. But the contract value he'd mentioned was real. $250,000 would save her business, pay off her debts, give her actual stability for the first time in months. What about your daughter? She asked. You mentioned raising her alone. Wouldn't this confuse her? Something shifted in Damien's expression, the first real emotion she'd seen from him. Sophie is 7. She understands that adults sometimes have work obligations that require social appearances. She won't be involved in the performance aspect. But if we're seen together publicly, people will ask about her. The media will dig into your personal life. The media already digs into my personal life. At least this way, I control the narrative. Damien pulled out another document and slid it across the table. This is a contract outlining the terms. Read it. Think about it. You have until end of business Thursday to decide. Lena picked up the contract with shaking hands. It was thorough. Pages of legal language outlining exactly what would be expected. Payment schedules, termination clauses, confidentiality agreements. And if I say no? She asked. Then I appreciate your proposal, wish you luck with your business, and we both move on. Damien stood up. But you won't say no, Ms. Hartwell, because you're drowning, and I'm offering you a life raft. You're too smart to turn that down out of pride. He walked to the door, then paused and looked back. One more thing. If you take this deal, you commit completely. Half measures don't work. When we're in public together, you're my girlfriend, not an employee playing a role. People can smell fake a mile away. If this is going to work, it has to look real. Then he left, closing the door quietly behind him. Lena sat alone in the conference room, staring at the contract in her hands and trying to figure out how her life had gone from complete disaster to completely surreal in less than a week. Her phone buzzed, a text from her landlord. Rent is now 10 days late. Need payment by Friday or starting eviction proceedings. Lena looked at the contract again. $250,000. 6 months. One lie. She picked up her phone and called Maya. Tell me not to do this, Lena said when Maya answered. Do what? Something absolutely insane that might either save my life or destroy it completely. Maya was quiet for a moment. Does it involve Damien Ashford? How did you know? Because your life has been a disaster for months, and suddenly you're talking about insane opportunities. What did he offer you? Lena told her everything. The contract, the money, the fake relationship. All of it. When she finished, Maya was silent for so long that Lena thought the call had dropped. Maya? I'm here. I'm just trying to decide if this is the worst idea I've ever heard or the best. Maya exhaled slowly. Lena, this is crazy. Like genuinely crazy. Fake dating a billionaire. That's not a business strategy. That's a romance novel plot. I know. But you're also about to lose everything. Your apartment, your business, any chance of rebuilding. And he's offering you a real way out. With strings attached. All money has strings attached. At least these strings are clearly defined in a legal contract. Maya paused. The real question is whether you can actually do it. Can you fake a relationship convincingly enough that no one figures it out? Can you spend 6 months pretending to date someone you barely know? Can you walk away when it's over without it destroying you? Lena thought about Marcus and Emma, about being humiliated in Aurelio's, about the look on her ex-fiancé's face when he saw her dining with Damian Ashford. She thought about the stack of unpaid bills on her kitchen counter and the eviction notice coming Friday. She thought about the event planning business she'd built from nothing, the dream she'd had of making it work, the future that had evaporated when Marcus left. I can do it, she said quietly. I have to. Then do it. But Lena? Yeah? Read that contract carefully, every single word, and maybe have a lawyer look at it too. Lena looked at the contract in her hands, at the pages of legal terminology and binding agreements. I don't have money for a lawyer. Then read it yourself, twice, 3 times. Make sure you understand exactly what you're agreeing to before you sign anything. They talked for another 20 minutes before hanging up. Lena stayed in the conference room, no one had asked her to leave, and read through the contract word by word. It was surprisingly straightforward. She would attend events with Damian as needed, typically 2 to 3 per month. She would organize all 12 events outlined in the scope of work. She would maintain the appearance of being his girlfriend in public and on social media. In return, she received the full contract payment in structured installments, with a significant upfront deposit to stabilize her business. The termination clause was clear. Either party could end the arrangement with 2 weeks' notice, though financial penalties applied if Lena terminated without cause before completing the charity gala. There was also a confidentiality agreement that essentially said she couldn't tell anyone the relationship was fake, couldn't write about it, couldn't sell the story to media, standard NDA language that Lena had seen in corporate contracts before. What struck her most was what wasn't in the contract. No requirements about where she lived or how she dressed or who she spent time with when not working. No control over her social media beyond maintaining the relationship narrative. No expectations about physical intimacy beyond what might be necessary for appearances. And even that was defined as minimal appropriate public affection, such as hand-holding or brief embraces. It was a business contract that happened to involve performing a relationship. Nothing more. Lena pulled out her phone and took photos of every page, then carefully set the original contract back in its folder. She had until Thursday to decide. 2 days to choose between drowning and taking a life raft that might be a trap. When she finally left Ashford Industries, the sun was setting over Central Park, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that felt almost too beautiful for the mess her life had become. Her phone buzzed with another message from her landlord. Lena looked at it, then opened her photos and stared at the contract. Thursday felt very far away. Lena signed the contract on Thursday morning in Jessica Park's office, her hand shaking so badly that her signature looked nothing like the careful cursive she'd practiced in high school. Jessica witnessed it without comment, made a copy, and handed Lena a check for $50,000, the first installment payment. Lena stared at the check until the numbers stopped making sense. $50,000. More money than she'd seen in one place in her entire life. Mr. Ashford would like to meet with you tomorrow afternoon, Jessica said, sliding a calendar across her desk. 3 o'clock. He'll brief you on the first event, a gallery opening Saturday night. Attire is cocktail formal. Do you need assistance with wardrobe? The question was asked politely, but Lena heard what Jessica wasn't saying. You can't show up to a high society event in department store clearance. That would be helpful, Lena managed, her pride taking another hit. I'll arrange for a stylist to meet you tomorrow at noon. She'll have selections ready based on your measurements. Jessica made a note on her tablet. Anything else? About 1,000 questions crowded Lena's mind, but none of them felt appropriate to ask Damian's assistant. Like how exactly she was supposed to pretend to date a man she'd spoken to exactly twice. Or whether he expected her to actually like him, or what she was supposed to say when people inevitably asked how they met. "No," Lena said. "Thank you." She left Ashford Industries with the contract and check in her purse, feeling like she'd just sold something she couldn't get back. The logical part of her brain said this was a smart business decision, a calculated risk that could save everything she'd worked for. The rest of her brain just kept screaming that she'd agreed to lie to everyone for 6 months while fake dating a billionaire who looked at her like she was a problem to be solved. The bank teller's eyes widened when Lena deposited the check. She probably thought it was fake. Who walked into a Chase branch in Astoria with a $50,000 check from Ashford Industries? But it cleared. By Friday morning, Lena's account showed a balance that made her want to cry. She paid her landlord 3 months of back rent plus 3 months forward. She paid off both credit cards in full. She transferred money to her business account to cover outstanding vendor invoices. And then she sat on her apartment floor surrounded by paid bills and just breathed for the first time in months. Maya came over that night with cheap wine and expensive takeout. Celebrating properly, she said, even though Lena couldn't tell anyone what they were actually celebrating. "So you're really doing this," Maya said, sprawled on Lena's secondhand couch. "Fake dating Damien Ashford. That's actually happening." Apparently, Lena picked at her pad thai, her appetite gone. "I have my first event tomorrow night." "What kind of event?" "Gallery opening in Chelsea. Some artist I've never heard of. Cocktail attire required." She paused. "They're sending a stylist." Maya sat up. "They're what?" "Jessica, Damien's assistant, said she'd arrange for someone to help with wardrobe, because obviously I can't show up wearing anything I currently own." "Lena, that's not—" "It's fine, it makes sense. I'm supposed to look like I belong in his world, and right now I don't." Lena set down her food. "This whole thing is about appearances anyway. Might as well get the costume right." Maya was quiet for a moment. "You know this isn't going to be easy, right? It's not just wearing nice clothes and smiling for cameras. You're going to have to actually spend time with him, talk to him, convince people you're together." "I know." "Do you? Because you look terrified." "I am terrified." Lena pulled her knees up to her chest. "I don't know how to do this, Maya. I don't know how to be someone's fake girlfriend. I barely knew how to be someone's real girlfriend, and look how that turned out." "Marcus was an asshole who didn't deserve you. That wasn't your fault." "Wasn't it, though? I didn't see it coming. Didn't notice my own sister and fiancé falling in love right in front of me. What does that say about my judgment?" Maya moved to sit beside her on the floor. "It says you trusted people you should have been able to trust. It says you were focused on building a life instead of looking for betrayal. That's not a character flaw, Lena. That's just being human." Lena wanted to believe her. She really did. The stylist showed up at noon the next day with 3 racks of clothing, 2 assistants, and enough shoes to outfit a small department store. Her name was Vivian, and she looked Lena up and down with the kind of professional assessment that felt both invasive and oddly comforting. "Jessica told me cocktail formal, gallery crowd, first public appearance," Vivian said, already pulling dresses from the racks. "We want sophisticated but not trying too hard, confident but not flashy. You're dating Damien Ashford, not auditioning to be a trophy wife." The distinction felt important, even though Lena wasn't sure she understood it. They tried on 11 dresses before finding the right one, a deep emerald silk that somehow made Lena look elegant instead of like she was playing dress-up. Vivian paired it with simple black heels and delicate gold jewelry that probably cost more than Lena's rent. "You'll keep all of this," Vivian said, making notes on her tablet. "Jessica will send you a schedule of upcoming events. I'll prepare appropriate options for each one and have them delivered to your apartment." "I can't accept all these clothes," Lena protested weakly. Vivian looked at her with something almost like sympathy. "You're representing Ashford Industries now. This isn't charity, it's part of the job. Jessica will explain the wardrobe stipend. Don't overthink it." After Vivian left, Lena stood in her tiny bathroom staring at her reflection in the emerald dress. She looked like someone else. Someone who belonged in penthouses and gallery openings. Someone who might actually date a billionaire. The illusion shattered the moment she spoke. "This is insane," she told her reflection. "You know that, right?" Her reflection didn't answer, which was probably for the best. Damien's driver picked her up at 7. The car was one of those black town cars that screamed money, and the driver, an older man who introduced himself as Robert, treated her with the kind of polite deference that made her uncomfortable. "Mr. Ashford is meeting you at the gallery," Robert said, navigating through Manhattan traffic. "He asked me to tell you not to be nervous." Did he actually say that? Or are you just being nice? Robert's eyes crinkled in the rearview mirror. He said, and I quote, "Tell her to stop panicking. It's just a party." Lena couldn't help but laugh. That sounds more accurate. The gallery was in Chelsea, tucked between a closed furniture store and a boutique hotel. Even from outside, Lena could see it was packed. Well-dressed people holding wine glasses, abstract art covering the walls. That particular buzz of social energy that came from putting wealthy people in a room together. Robert opened her door. "You'll be fine, Ms. Hartwell. Mr. Ashford has good instincts about people." Lena wished she had that much confidence in Damien's judgment. She walked into the gallery on legs that felt disconnected from her body, scanning the crowd for Damien. She spotted him near the back, talking to an older couple in matching black outfits. He wore a dark suit without a tie, looking simultaneously formal and relaxed in that way only very wealthy people seem to manage. Then he saw her. Something shifted in his expression, not quite a smile, but close. He excused himself from the conversation and crossed the gallery with the kind of purpose that made people step aside automatically. "You came," he said when he reached her. "You paid me $50,000. I'd be an idiot not to show up." "Honesty. I appreciate that." Damien's eyes traveled over her dress, but not in the creepy way Marcus's friends used to look at her. This was assessment, not objectification. "Vivian did well. You look like you belong here." "I don't, though." "Not yet. Give it time." He offered his arm. "Ready?" Lena hesitated for just a moment before taking it. His arm was solid under her hand, warm through the expensive fabric of his suit. They moved through the gallery together, and Lena felt every eye in the room tracking them. Conversations paused. People whispered. A woman near the wine table actually pulled out her phone to take a photo before her companion stopped her. "They're staring," Lena said quietly. "They're curious. I don't bring dates to events. Ever. You're disrupting the established pattern." Damien stopped in front of a large abstract painting, swirls of red and black that hurt to look at. "What do you think of the art?" Lena studied the painting, trying to find something intelligent to say. "It's angry. It's derivative. The artist is trying too hard to channel Rothko without understanding why Rothko worked." Damien moved to the next piece. "But the gallery owner is a major donor to my foundation, so we're here to be supportive, not critical." "Is that what we're doing? Being supportive?" "We're being seen together. That's the primary objective. Everything else is just set dressing." A waiter passed with champagne. Damien took 2 glasses and handed one to Lena. She sipped it carefully, hyper-aware of everything, how she stood, how she held the glass, whether her smile looked natural or forced. "You're overthinking," Damien observed. "How can you tell?" "You look like you're solving a math problem instead of attending a party. Relax. We're just 2 people looking at bad art and drinking good champagne. 2 people who are lying to everyone here about their relationship. 2 people who have a mutually beneficial business arrangement that happens to look like a relationship. Semantics." Damien guided her toward a quieter corner of the gallery. "Tell me something real. Something that has nothing to do with any of this." The request caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I already know the facts from your business proposal. I know you're broke and your ex cheated on you and your family is terrible. Tell me something that isn't in the narrative, something true." Lena thought about it. "I hate coffee," she finally said. Damien raised an eyebrow. "You hate coffee. Everyone assumes I love it because I'm always drinking it, but I actually hate the taste. I just drink it to stay awake because I can't afford the fancy tea I actually like, and coffee is cheap at bodegas. That's the most depressing thing I've heard all week." "You asked for something true." "I did." Damien finished his champagne and set the empty glass on a passing tray. "What kind of tea?" "What? What kind of tea do you actually like?" Lena felt her face heat. "It doesn't matter. Humor me." "There's this Earl Grey lavender blend from a tea shop in Brooklyn. It costs $30 for a small tin, which is insane, but it's perfect. I used to buy it once a month as a treat, before everything fell apart." Damien pulled out his phone and typed something. "What's the shop called?" You don't need to eat. Lena, what's the shop called? Brooklyn Tea Merchants. But seriously, you don't have to buy me tea. That's not what this arrangement is about. This arrangement is about making our relationship look real. Real partners notice things like beverage preferences. He pocketed his phone. Considerate research. Before Lena could argue, a woman in a silver dress approached them with the kind of aggressive confidence that came from too much money and not enough supervision. Damien, I didn't expect to see you here. She air-kissed both his cheeks before turning to Lena with undisguised curiosity. And you brought a guest. How unusual. Catherine, this is Lena Hartwell. Lena, Catherine Dumont. Catherine serves on the board of the Mitchell Foundation. The name clicked. Catherine Dumont, old money, extensive art collection, husband who owned half of Manhattan real estate. Lena had researched her during the Mitchell Foundation Gala planning 2 years ago. It's nice to meet you, Lena said, offering her hand. Catherine shook it with the kind of limp grip that suggested she didn't really want to touch anyone below her tax bracket. Hartwell. That name sounds familiar. Weren't you engaged to someone in Marcus Chen's circle? The question landed like a slap. Of course Catherine would know. Rich people in Manhattan all knew each other's business. It was practically their primary hobby. I was, Lena said evenly. We're not together anymore. Yes. I heard about that unfortunate situation with your sister. Catherine's smile was all teeth and no warmth. How terribly awkward for everyone involved. I'm sure Thanksgiving dinner must be interesting. Damien's hand settled on the small of Lena's back, warm, steady, unmistakably possessive. Actually, Lena organized the Mitchell Foundation Gala you attended 2 years ago. The one you told me was the best run event you'd been to in a decade. Catherine's expression flickered with something that might have been recognition or might have been irritation. That was you? It was, Lena confirmed. Well, small world. Catherine's attention shifted back to Damien. I didn't realize you were seeing anyone. The tabloids will be devastated. They've been trying to match you with eligible socialites for years. The tabloids can survive the disappointment, Damien said dryly. If you'll excuse us, we were just leaving. He guided Lena away before Catherine could respond, his hand still on her back. We don't actually have to leave, Lena said once they were out of earshot. I can handle people like her. I know you can, but I've made our appearance, supported the gallery, and let enough people see us together. The rest is diminishing returns. Damien nodded toward the exit. Besides, I'm hungry, and the food here is terrible. Have you eaten? Not really. Then we're getting dinner. Actual dinner, not canapes and artistic pretension. They ended up at a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and wine served in regular glasses instead of crystal. It was so completely different from the gallery scene that Lena actually laughed when they walked in. What? Damien asked, pulling out her chair. I just assumed billionaires only ate at Michelin-starred restaurants with 17-course tasting menus. Most do. I prefer places where I can order food I recognize and no one asks me to pair it with wine I can't pronounce. He opened the menu. The pasta here is better than most of the expensive Italian places in Midtown, and the owner doesn't care who I am, which is refreshing. A waiter appeared, younger guy with tattoos covering both arms and an easy smile. Mr. A, been a while. Your usual table? This is fine, Marco, thanks. Marco turned to Lena. First time here? Yeah. You're in for a treat. We've got fresh burrata tonight, and the cacio e pepe will change your life. That's not hyperbole. Literally life-changing pasta. After Marco left, Lena leaned forward. Mr. A? He started calling me that when I told him Damien Ashford was too formal. I think he was being ironic, but it stuck. How often do you come here? Once, maybe twice a month? Usually alone. Sometimes with my daughter when she wants pasta, and I want to avoid the paparazzi that stake out the family-friendly places near my apartment. It was the first time he'd mentioned Sophie since their initial conversation. Lena chose her next words carefully. How old is she again? 7, almost 8. Birthday's in October. That must be hard. Raising her alone. Damien's expression closed off slightly. It's what needed to happen after my wife died. Someone had to raise her, and I wasn't going to outsource parenting to nannies and boarding schools. That's not what I meant. I just meant it must be lonely sometimes. Being the only one responsible for everything. He was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming against the table. It's lonely most of the time. But lonely and alone aren't the same thing. I have Sophie, and that's enough. The food arrived. Burrata for her, carpaccio for him, and a bottle of red wine Marco insisted they needed to try. The pasta came next, and Marco hadn't been lying. It was genuinely the best cacio e pepe Lena had ever tasted. Told you, Damien said, watching her reaction. Life-changing. I'm not ready to go that far, but it's really good. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The restaurant buzzed with conversation around them. Couples on dates, friends catching up, families celebrating birthdays. Normal people doing normal things. Can I ask you something? Lena said eventually. You're going to anyway. Why did you really offer me this contract? And don't tell me it's just about changing your public image. You could have hired any event planner in the city. Damien set down his fork and considered her question. Because you were desperate enough to sit at my table and ask for help, but you didn't ask for money. You asked for 2 minutes. That showed me you understood the difference between temporary solutions and actual opportunities. That's very analytical. I'm an analytical person. He refilled both their wine glasses. Also, I like that you were honest about being broke. Most people in your position would have pretended everything was fine. You owned your situation without making excuses or blaming everyone else. I blame my ex-fiancé pretty thoroughly. He deserved it. That's different from blaming the world for your problems. Damien leaned back in his chair. You want the real answer? I'm tired of people who can't tell the difference between what they want and what they need. You needed help. You were willing to work for it. That's rare. Lena absorbed this. And the fake relationship part? Where did that idea come from? Practical problem solving. I need to change my public image before the charity gala. Hiring a publicist to manufacture stories wouldn't work. People can spot that immediately. But dating someone? That's a narrative people understand. It makes me seem more accessible, more human. He paused, and it gives you credibility by association. By the time we stage the breakup, you'll have spent 6 months networking with every major player in New York philanthropy and corporate event planning. Your business will survive regardless of whether I continue the contract. You've really thought this through. I think everything through. It's what I do. They finished dinner while Damien asked her questions about event planning. Not the business side, but the actual work. What she liked about it, what drove her crazy, what made a good event versus a great one. Lena found herself actually relaxing, talking about the craft she'd spent years developing. She told him about the time a bride fired her 3 days before the wedding, and she had to completely redesign the venue overnight. About the corporate gala where the keynote speaker showed up drunk, and she'd convinced a random attendee to give an impromptu speech instead. About the small nonprofit fundraiser that raised twice their goal because she'd figured out how to make people actually care about the cause, instead of just writing checks to feel virtuous. That's the difference, she said, warming to the topic. Most event planners just execute what clients want, but good planners understand what clients actually need, even when they don't know themselves. It's like translation, taking their vague ideas and turning them into something real. Is that what you did with my gala proposal? Translated what you thought I needed? Sort of. I looked at your foundation's work and thought about what story you should be telling versus what story you've been telling. The invisible impact concept came from that. Damien studied her across the table. You're good at reading people. Sometimes, not always. Lena thought about Marcus and Emma, about missing all the signs. I miss things too. Everyone misses things. The question is what you do after. Before Lena could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it automatically and felt her stomach drop. Emma's name on the screen. A text message. Can we please talk? I hate how things ended between us. Damien noticed her reaction. Problem? My sister. Asking if we can talk. Lena set the phone down. We haven't spoken since everything happened. My parents keep pressuring me to forgive her, and apparently Emma's feeling guilty enough to reach out. Are you going to respond? I don't know. Part of me wants to tell her exactly what I think of her, but mostly I just want her to leave me alone. Then tell her that. It's not that simple. She's my sister. Family is complicated. Family is only as complicated as you let it be. Damien's tone had gone flat. My parents were Manhattan socialites who cared more about their reputation than their son. When my wife died and I inherited her family's company, they tried to take control of everything, my business, my finances, my daughter. I cut them off completely. Haven't spoken to them in 6 years. The admission hung in the air between them. Do you regret it? Lena asked. No. They were toxic. Removing toxic people from your life isn't cruel, it's self-preservation. He picked up his wine glass. Your sister slept with your fiancé for months while pretending to support your wedding. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern of choices. You don't owe her forgiveness just because you share DNA. Lena looked at her phone again. Emma's text still glowed on the screen, waiting for a response. She turned the phone face down on the table. I'll think about it, she said. Fair enough. Robert drove them back to Lena's apartment afterward. The drive from the West Village to Astoria took 40 minutes in Friday night traffic, and they spent most of it in comfortable silence while Lena watched Manhattan slide past the tinted windows. When they pulled up outside her building, a 6-story walk-up that had seen better decades, Damien didn't comment on the neighborhood or the graffitied entrance or the broken intercom. Tomorrow we have brunch at the Carlyle with 2 of my major investors, he said. 11 o'clock. Robert will pick you up at 10:30. Brunch at the Carlyle, very fancy. They're expecting my girlfriend to be charming and interested in their very boring stories about market trends. Can you handle that? I organized fundraisers for corporate VPs for 3 years. I can definitely pretend to care about market trends. Good. Damien hesitated, then added, You did well tonight, at the gallery, with Catherine and the rest of it. Natural. The compliment surprised her. Thanks. I was terrified the entire time. I know, but you didn't show it. That's what matters. Lena reached for the door handle, then stopped. Can I ask one more thing? Sure. Do you actually believe this will work? That people will think we're really together? Damien looked at her directly, his dark eyes unreadable in the dim light. I think people believe what they want to believe. We give them the right signals, maintain consistency, and they'll write their own story. That's how narratives work. That's very cynical. That's very realistic. He leaned forward slightly. But yes, I think it will work. Because you're good at reading people, and I'm good at controlling situations. Together, that's a formidable combination. Lena got out of the car and watched it drive away, taillight disappearing around the corner. Inside her apartment, she kicked off the expensive heels, her feet aching after hours in shoes designed for looking good instead of walking, and sat down on her couch, still wearing the emerald dress. Her phone buzzed again. Not Emma this time. Maya. How did it go? Lena typed back, Weird. Good weird, I think, but definitely weird. Details tomorrow. I want all the details. Okay, tomorrow. Lena set the phone aside and looked around her tiny studio. Same cracked ceiling, same secondhand furniture, same water stain in the corner the landlord kept promising to fix. But now the bills were paid. Her business account was funded. She had actual stability for the first time since Marcus left. All she had to do was spend 6 months pretending to date a man who thought of her as a business arrangement. Easy. Her phone buzzed one more time. A delivery notification. Package arriving Monday. She opened the tracking details. Brooklyn Tea Merchants, 2 tins of Earl Grey lavender blend. Sender, Damien Ashford. Lena stared at the notification for a long time, trying to figure out what it meant that he'd remembered such a small detail from their conversation. Probably nothing. Probably just him being thorough about maintaining the illusion. Probably. She changed into pajamas and washed off her makeup, and when she finally crawled into bed just after midnight, she dreamed about gallery openings and fake relationships and the way Damien's hand had felt on her back, steady and warm and surprisingly real. The tea arrived Monday morning in a box so carefully packed it looked like someone was shipping fine china instead of 2 tins of loose leaf. Lena opened it, sitting on her kitchen floor, still in her pajamas, and found a handwritten note tucked inside. You shouldn't have to drink things you hate. D. She made a cup immediately, and the familiar scent of bergamot and lavender filled her cramped apartment. It tasted exactly how she remembered, perfect and expensive and completely unnecessary, which somehow made it worse that he'd sent it. The next 2 weeks became a blur of events and appearances that left Lena's head spinning. Brunch at the Carlyle turned into dinner at Daniel, which turned into a Broadway opening night, which turned into a fundraiser for literacy programs where Damien gave a speech that actually made people cry. Every event meant another designer dress delivered to her apartment, another car ride with Robert, another few hours of pretending she belonged in rooms where people casually discussed their third homes and stock portfolios. And through it all, Damien played his part perfectly. He held her hand at appropriate moments, introduced her to investors and board members with just enough pride in his voice that people believed it, laughed at her jokes in public while maintaining that same unreadable expression in private. It should have felt fake. Should have been obviously transactional, but somehow it wasn't. "You're getting too comfortable," Maya said 2 weeks into the arrangement, sitting in Lena's apartment surrounded by fabric swatches for an upcoming corporate event. "I can hear it in your voice when you talk about him." "I'm not getting comfortable. I'm getting good at the job." "Lena, you spent 20 minutes yesterday telling me about how Damien noticed you hate seafood and made sure the restaurant had vegetarian options without you asking. That's not job performance. That's you starting to like him." Lena looked up from her laptop where she'd been drafting the charity gala proposal. "He's observant. That's all. It's the same way he notices when investors are lying or when board members are about to cause problems. He reads people. And you're reading into it." "I'm not." "You are. And it's going to mess you up when this ends." Maya set down the fabric samples. "I'm not saying don't do the job, but remember what this is. He's paying you to perform a relationship, not to actually have one." The words hit harder than they should have. Lena knew Maya was right, knew she was starting to blur lines that should have stayed clear. But knowing something and feeling it were different things. "I know what this is," Lena said quietly. "I'm not stupid. I never said you were stupid. I said you were getting comfortable. There's a difference." That conversation was still echoing in Lena's head 3 days later when Damien texted her at 11 at night. Still awake? She'd been reviewing vendor contracts for the charity gala, her laptop overheating on her stomach while she lay in bed. Unfortunately. "Why?" "Need a favor. Can you come to my office?" "Now." "It's almost midnight. I know what time it is. Robert's outside your building." Lena sat up, her laptop sliding onto the bed. She went to her window and looked down. Sure enough, the Blacktown car was idling at the curb. "What's going on?" she texted back. "Tell you when you get here." "Please." The please got her. Damien didn't ask for things, he stated them. Requests implied uncertainty, and he was never uncertain about anything. Lena changed out of her pajamas into jeans and a sweater, grabbed her keys, and headed downstairs. Robert didn't comment on the late hour or her casual clothes. He just opened the door and drove her to Midtown in silence. Ashford Tower was eerily quiet at night. The lobby lights were dimmed, and the security guard barely glanced up when Robert escorted her to the executive elevators. When the doors opened on the 48th floor, the entire office was dark except for the glow coming from Damien's corner office. She found him standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, still in his work clothes but with his tie discarded and his sleeves rolled up. The Manhattan skyline glittered behind him like a postcard. "Thanks for coming," he said without turning around. "You sent your car to my apartment at midnight. I figured it was important." "It is. I need your help with something that isn't in the contract." Lena's guard went up immediately. "What kind of something?" Damien finally turned to face her. He looked tired, actually tired, with shadows under his eyes and tension in his shoulders that she'd never seen before. "Sophie's school is having parent conferences tomorrow. Her teacher requested I bring my girlfriend if possible. She thinks Sophie would benefit from seeing me in a stable relationship." The request caught Lena completely off guard. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend in front of your daughter?" "No. I want you to come to a 15-minute meeting and smile while her teacher talks about reading levels and social development. Sophie won't even be there. She'll be in class. But she'll know I went. She'll think we're actually together. She already thinks that. She sees the tabloid photos on her friends' parents' phones. She asks questions I've been deflecting for 2 weeks." Damien ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't expect the media attention to reach her school this fast. 7-year-olds aren't supposed to care about their father's dating lives. 7-year-olds care about everything their parents do. I'm aware of that now." He walked to his desk and sat on the edge of it, looking more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. "Her teacher thinks having you there will help Sophie feel more secure, that seeing me with someone stable will ease some anxiety she's been displaying in class." "Anxiety about what?" "About me leaving, about being alone. About the same things every kid worries about when they've already lost one parent. His voice went flat. The school psychologist thinks she's afraid I'll die too, and she'll have no one. Apparently that's manifesting as behavioral issues. The pain in his voice was so raw it made Lena's chest ache. This wasn't the controlled billionaire CEO or the calculating businessman. This was just a father who didn't know how to fix his daughter's fear. What kind of behavioral issues? Lena asked gently. Not sleeping, having meltdowns over small things, getting into fights with other kids. Damien looked at her directly. The teacher thinks stability at home will help. I can't give her back her mother, but I can show her I'm not alone. That she's not alone. By lying to her. By giving her what she needs right now. We can deal with the truth later, after she's more secure. Lena wanted to argue that lying to a child was never the right answer, but she'd also never been a parent, never had to make impossible choices between truth and comfort. What happens when we break up? She asked. Won't that just make it worse? We'll handle it carefully, stage it gradually. By then, hopefully, she'll be in a better place emotionally. Damien stood up. I know this isn't what you signed up for. The contract says you attend public events, not parent-teacher conferences. If you say no, I'll understand. Lena thought about the contract sitting in her apartment, about the clear boundaries it established. This definitely crossed those boundaries. Getting involved with Sophie meant getting involved with the most important part of Damien's life, the part that was real instead of performance. It was exactly the kind of thing Maya had warned her about, the kind of thing that blurred lines and made everything more complicated. What time is the conference? Lena heard herself ask. 2:00 at Westbridge Academy on the Upper East Side. I'll be there. Relief flickered across Damien's face. Thank you. But after this, we need to talk about boundaries, about what's actually covered by our arrangement and what isn't. Agreed. He walked her to the elevator. I'll have Robert pick you up at 1:30. The elevator doors opened and Lena stepped inside. Just before they closed, Damien spoke again. Lena? I know this is a lot to ask. I wouldn't do it if there was another option. The doors closed before she could respond. Westbridge Academy looked exactly like what it was, a private school for Manhattan's wealthiest families. The building was a converted brownstone with actual ivy growing on the walls, and the entrance had a security system that probably cost more than Lena's yearly income. Damien met her in the lobby, looking every inch the successful executive in a charcoal suit. But Lena noticed the tension in his jaw, the way his hand clenched and unclenched at his side. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. Sophie's teacher, Miss Brennan, was younger than Lena expected. Maybe early 30s, with kind eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who'd chosen teaching because she actually liked children. Her classroom was bright and cheerful, with student artwork covering every available wall. Mr. Ashford, thank you for coming. Ms. Brennan shook Damien's hand, then turned to Lena. And you must be Lena. Sophie's mentioned you. That stopped Lena cold. She has? A few times, usually in the context of asking if her dad is happy now. Ms. Brennan gestured to 2 chairs set up in front of her desk. Please sit. I promise this won't take long. They sat, and Damien's hand found Lena's automatically. The gesture was probably for show, but his grip was tight enough that she could feel genuine tension. Ms. Brennan pulled out a folder. So, academically, Sophie is doing very well. She's reading above grade level, excelling in math, and her creative writing is exceptional. The issues we're seeing are primarily social-emotional. You mentioned behavioral problems, Damien said. Problems is a strong word. I'd say challenges. Sophie has always been a quiet child, but lately she's been withdrawn during group activities. She also had an incident last week where she got into a physical altercation with another student. Damien sat forward. Sophie got into a fight? No one called me. It was handled in the moment and we were going to discuss it today. The other child made a comment about Sophie not having a mother, and Sophie pushed her. It wasn't aggressive, more defensive, like she was trying to protect herself from something painful. Lena felt Damien's hand tighten on hers. The school psychologist evaluated her afterward, Ms. Brennan continued. She believes Sophie is experiencing anxiety related to loss and abandonment. It's completely normal for children who've lost a parent, but it does need to be addressed. What do you recommend? Damien's voice was carefully controlled, but Lena could hear the fear underneath it. Consistency at home. predictable routines, and positive modeling of stable adult relationships. Ms. Brennan smiled at Lena. Which is partly why I'm glad you're here. Sophie needs to see that her father has support, that he's not carrying everything alone. It helps her feel more secure. The guilt hit Lena like a wave. They were lying to this teacher, lying to Sophie, all in the name of making a scared little girl feel better. And the worst part was, it might actually work. We're doing our best, Lena said quietly, because someone needed to say something. I can see that. And Sophie's mentioned how much happier her dad seems lately. Miss Brennan looked at Damien. Children are perceptive. They pick up on their parents' emotional states. If you're more settled, she'll feel that. They talked for another 10 minutes about strategies and support systems. Ms. Brennan recommended a child therapist who specialized in grief counseling. Damien asked questions about Sophie's daily routine at school, whether she was eating lunch, whether she seemed happy during recess. Every question revealed how much he cared, how desperately he wanted to fix whatever was hurting his daughter. When they finally left the school, Damien was silent until they reached the car. Robert was waiting, but Damien waved him off. Let's walk, he said to Lena. They walked through the Upper East Side in silence, past brownstones and boutiques and dog walkers with expensive breeds. It was one of those perfect October afternoons where the light turned everything golden and the air held just enough chill to feel like fall. Finally, Damien spoke. I'm a terrible father. You're not. I didn't even know she was having fights at school. I didn't know she was worried about me dying. What kind of parent misses that? The kind who's doing everything alone while running a billion-dollar company. Lena stopped walking and turned to face him. You can't see everything, Damien. You're not superhuman. I should be better at this. She's the only thing that actually matters, and I'm failing her. The raw honesty in his voice cracked something open in Lena's chest. She'd seen him controlled and calculating, seen him charming and cold, but she'd never seen him vulnerable like this. You're not failing her, Lena said firmly. You showed up today. You asked questions. You're getting her professional help. That's not failure. That's doing the hard work of parenting. Damien looked at her for a long moment. You'd be good at this. If you had kids. I'm never having kids. Too expensive, too complicated, too much risk of screwing them up. That's fear talking. Maybe, but it's also realistic. Lena started walking again. Besides, I can barely take care of myself. Adding a whole other human to that equation seems irresponsible. They walked another block before Damien spoke again. Sophie wants to meet you. Lena's steps faltered. What? She's been asking, ever since the photos started appearing online. She wants to know who you are, whether you're nice, whether you make me smile. He shoved his hands in his pockets. I've been avoiding it because bringing you into her life feels like crossing a line. But after today, after hearing how anxious she is, you think meeting me will help. I think she needs to see that I'm okay, that we're okay, and I can't show her that if I keep you completely separate from my actual life. Lena's mind raced. Meeting Sophie meant getting even more entangled in the parts of Damien's life that were supposed to stay off limits. It meant lying to a 7-year-old who was already scared and confused. It also meant potentially helping that same 7-year-old feel less alone. When? Lena asked. This weekend, Saturday afternoon. Nothing formal. Just come to the apartment, maybe watch a movie or something. Let her see you're real, and I'm not making you up. Kids that age don't just accept new people in their parents' lives. I know, but she's smart enough to know something's making me different lately. Better, according to her teacher. She wants to understand what. They'd reached Central Park. Damien led her to a bench overlooking the pond where ducks paddled in lazy circles and tourists took photos. Can I ask you something? Lena said once they'd sat down. Sure. What was she like, your wife? Damien was quiet for so long that Lena thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, alive. She was alive in ways I've never been. Always laughing, always moving, always finding joy in things I didn't even notice. She made everything brighter just by being there. How did she die? Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light when Sophie was 2. She died instantly. The other driver walked away with a broken arm and a DUI charge that got plea bargained down to reckless endangerment. His voice was flat, emotionless. He served 6 months. My wife got buried. Lena didn't know what to say to that. Sorry felt inadequate. Any platitude would have been insulting. Sophie doesn't remember her, Damien continued. Not really. Sometimes she says she does, but I think she's remembering photos, not actual moments. I keep trying to tell her stories about her mother, but how do you explain someone like that to a child? How do you capture aliveness in words? You can't, you just keep trying anyway. Damien looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. You're better at this than you think. At what? Understanding people. Saying the right thing without making it worse. He stood up. Come on, I'll take you home. Robert drove them back to Astoria, and Damien insisted on walking her to her building despite the neighborhood being perfectly safe at 4 in the afternoon. Saturday, he said at her door. 2 o'clock. I'll send a car. What should I bring? Do kids even care about gifts from strangers? She's 7. She'll probably ask you 17 questions in the first 5 minutes and decide whether she likes you based on your answers. Just be honest with her. Kids can smell bullshit better than adults. Great, no pressure. Damien smiled, an actual smile, small but real. You'll be fine. She's easier than most billionaire investors. That's setting a low bar. He left, and Lena climbed the stairs to her apartment feeling like she'd just agreed to something she couldn't take back. Maya came over that night with Thai food and moral support. She listened to the whole story, the parent-teacher conference, Sophie's anxiety, the upcoming meeting, without interrupting. When Lena finished, Maya just shook her head. You know you're in too deep, right? I know. Like, way too deep. This stopped being a business arrangement the moment you agreed to meet his kid. I know that too. So what are you going to do about it? Lena picked at her pad tie. Get through Saturday. Help Sophie feel better if I can. Try not to make anything worse. And when you inevitably start actually caring about both of them, what then? Then I'll deal with it when it happens. Lena, what do you want me to say, Maya? That I should back out? Tell Damien his daughter's anxiety isn't my problem? Walk away from the contract and go back to being broke? Lena set down her food. I already made this choice. I can't unmake it just because it's getting complicated. Maya was quiet for a moment. I'm not saying walk away. I'm just saying be careful. Because the way you talk about him is different now. The way your whole face changes when you mention something he did. You're falling for this, and I don't think you even realize it. I'm not falling for anything. I'm just doing my job. Keep telling yourself that. But later that night, lying in bed and staring at her ceiling, Lena wondered if Maya was right. She'd started looking forward to events with Damien instead of dreading them. Started noticing small things about him, the way he listened when people talked, the dry humor that appeared when he wasn't performing for investors, the gentleness in his voice when he mentioned Sophie. She'd also noticed the way her stomach flipped when he texted her, the way her pulse quickened when Robert's car pulled up, the way she'd started choosing clothes based on whether Damien might like them, even though his opinion shouldn't matter. None of that was in the contract. None of that was supposed to happen. Saturday arrived too quickly. Vivian had sent over casual clothes, designer jeans and a soft cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Lena's monthly grocery budget. She agonized over whether to bring a gift for Sophie before settling on a book she'd loved as a kid, hoping it wouldn't seem desperate. Damien's apartment was in a building overlooking Central Park, the kind of place where a doorman in white gloves opened the door and the elevator required a special key. The ride up to the penthouse level felt like ascending to another world. Damien answered the door himself, dressed casually in jeans and a dark Henley that made him look younger somehow, less intimidating. She's nervous, he said quietly. She's been changing outfits for an hour. I'm nervous too, if that helps. It doesn't, but I appreciate the honesty. He led her inside. The apartment was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture that somehow felt warm instead of cold, artwork that was probably worth more than Lena would make in her lifetime. But what caught her attention were the small touches that made it actually feel like a home. Sophie's drawings held on the fridge with magnets. A pile of chapter books on the coffee table. Sneakers kicked off near the door. Sophie, Damien called. Lena's here. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a small figure appeared in the hallway, all dark hair and big eyes and nervous energy. Sophie Ashford was beautiful in that way all 7-year-olds are, with her father's sharp features softened by childhood. She wore purple leggings and a shirt with a glittery unicorn on it, and she clutched a stuffed rabbit like a shield. Hi, Lena said, staying where she was instead of approaching. I'm Lena. I know who you are. I saw your picture on my friend's mom's phone. Sophie's voice was quiet but clear. You went to that art thing with my dad. The gallery opening? Yeah, I did. Did you like the art? Honestly, not really. It was kind of pretentious. Sophie's face split into a grin. I don't know what pretentious means, but my dad says that about stuff all the time. It means trying too hard to seem important when it's really just boring. Oh, then, yeah, that sounds like what you said. Sophie took a few steps closer, still holding the rabbit. Do you like my dad? The directness of the question caught Lena off guard. She glanced at Damien, who looked equally surprised. Sophie, he started, but Lena cut him off. Yeah, she said to Sophie. I do like him. Why? Most people think he's scary. Most people don't know him very well. He's not scary when you actually talk to him. He's scary sometimes, like when I don't clean my room and he uses his business voice. Sophie finally let go of the rabbit, setting it on the couch. Are you going to marry him? Sophie, Damien tried again. It's okay, Lena said, then focused back on the little girl watching her with intense curiosity. I don't know what's going to happen. We're just spending time together right now and seeing how it goes. That's what my friend's mom said before she married her boyfriend. They got married in June and I was the flower girl. Well, if anything like that ever happens, I'll make sure you get a good job at the wedding. Sophie seemed satisfied with that answer. She walked over to Lena and stared up at her with serious eyes. I brought you a book, Lena said, pulling it from her bag. It was my favorite when I was your age, but if you already have it or don't like it, that's totally fine. Sophie took the book, a worn copy of The Secret Garden, and examined it carefully. My mom used to read this to me. The room went completely still. She did? Damien's voice was soft, careful. I think so. I remember the pictures, and someone reading about a garden that was hidden. Sophie looked up at her father. Was that Mom? Yeah, baby, that was Mom. She loved that book. Sophie turned back to Lena. Then I'll definitely read it. Thank you. The simple acceptance in her voice made Lena's throat tight. They spent the afternoon watching a Pixar movie Sophie had apparently seen 17 times already. Sophie insisted Lena sit between her and Damien on the couch, then proceeded to explain every single plot point before it happened. Damien clearly knew all of it already, but listened patiently, occasionally adding details Sophie forgot. Halfway through the movie, Sophie leaned against Lena's shoulder without seeming to realize she was doing it. By the end, she'd fallen asleep with her head in Lena's lap. She does that, Damien said quietly. Gets herself so worked up that she crashes hard afterward. She's sweet. She's terrified I'm going to disappear like her mom did. That's what all the behavioral stuff is about. He looked at his sleeping daughter. I don't know how to fix that. How to promise her I'm not going anywhere when I can't actually control whether that's true. You can't fix it. You can just keep showing up. That's all anyone can do. They sat in silence for a while, the movie playing its credits on the giant television. Sophie's breathing was slow and steady, completely peaceful in sleep. She liked you, Damien said eventually. She liked that I gave her a book her mom used to read. That's not the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. You gave her a connection to something she lost. That matters. Lena looked down at the small girl asleep in her lap and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. This was supposed to be performance, a job, a transaction. But Sophie felt real. Her weight against Lena's legs, her gentle breathing, the way she'd asked direct questions and accepted honest answers, all of it was too real to be part of any contract. I should go, Lena said softly, before she wakes up and gets confused about why I'm still here. Damien carefully lifted Sophie, carrying her with practiced ease toward what must have been her bedroom. He came back a few minutes later. She didn't wake up, probably won't until dinner. He walked Lena to the door. Thank you, for today, for all of it. She's a good kid. She is, and you were good with her. Damien hesitated, then added, I know this isn't what we agreed to, getting you involved with Sophie. I'm sorry if that crossed a line. It did cross a line, but I'm not sorry it happened. Something shifted in Damien's expression, something warm and unguarded that disappeared almost immediately. I'll see you Tuesday. Investor dinner at Per Se. I'll be ready Lena rode the elevator down, feeling like she'd left something important in that apartment, but not knowing what it was. Her phone buzzed before Robert even pulled away from the building. Maya, how did it go? Lena stared at the message for a long time before typing back. I'm in trouble. What kind of trouble? The kind where I'm starting to forget this isn't real. Maya's response came immediately. Then you need to remember, fast, before it gets worse. But Lena had a feeling it was already too late for that. The trouble became impossible to ignore 3 weeks later at the Plaza Hotel, where Damien's charity gala was finally happening after months of planning that had consumed Lena's entire life. Everything was perfect. The venue had been transformed exactly according to her vision. Industrial chic mixed with raw storytelling, featuring actual beneficiaries of Ashford's foundation instead of generic auction items. The lighting created intimate pockets throughout the massive ballroom. The food came from restaurants owned by program participants. Even the music was performed by kids who'd received scholarships from Damien's education initiative. Lena had spent the entire day on site, managing last-minute crises and vendor issues with the kind of focused intensity that left no room for anything else. By the time guests started arriving at 7, she was running on coffee and adrenaline, her feet aching in designer heels and her brain buzzing with contingency plans. She stood near the entrance watching people filter in, billionaires and socialites, investors and board members, all dressed in their finest while examining the unconventional setup with expressions ranging from curious to skeptical. This was the moment that would define whether her concept actually worked or whether she'd destroyed her career with an idea too risky for this crowd. Stop panicking, Damien's voice came from behind her. I can see you doing it from across the room. Lena turned to find him in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her first car, looking unfairly good and completely calm. I'm not panicking, I'm monitoring. You're catastrophizing. There's a difference. He handed her a glass of champagne. Drink this, you've earned it. I can't drink yet. What if something goes wrong with the sound system? Or the caterers run out of food? Or people hate the whole thing and leave early? Then we'll handle it. But none of that is going to happen because you've planned every detail 17 times. Damien's hand settled on her lower back, the gesture so natural now that Lena barely registered it. Breathe. The hard part is over. The hard part is just starting. These people expect traditional galas with silent auctions and string quartets. I gave them industrial spaces and teenagers playing original music. You gave them something real. That's worth more than another boring ballroom event. He guided her toward the main floor. Come on, we need to make an entrance before everyone assumes I skipped my own fundraiser. They walked into the ballroom together, and Lena felt the same shift in attention she'd experienced at every event over the past month. Conversations paused, eyes tracked their movement. People smiled and whispered, creating narratives about the billionaire CEO and his event planner girlfriend who'd somehow made him seem almost human. The performance had become so smooth that Lena sometimes forgot it wasn't real. Catherine Dumont appeared within minutes, dressed in silver and dripping with diamonds that could have funded a small country. She'd become a fixture at every Ashford event, always finding ways to insert herself into conversations while making subtle digs at Lena. Darling, this is quite the departure from traditional galas, Catherine said, her smile sharp as glass. Very brave of you to take such risks with Damien's foundation's reputation. The foundation's work is risky, Lena replied evenly. The event should reflect that. How progressive. Though I do hope the donors appreciate being challenged rather than simply entertained. Catherine turned to Damien. Your board must have been thrilled with this concept. The board was skeptical until they saw the execution, Damien said. Now they're impressed, just like everyone else will be once they stop looking for reasons to criticize. The subtle rebuke made Catherine's smile falter. She excused herself quickly, disappearing into the crowd with wounded dignity. You didn't have to defend me, Lena said once Catherine was gone. Yes, I did. She's been targeting you for weeks, and I'm tired of watching it happen. Damien took her empty champagne glass and set it on a passing tray. Dance with me. What? Dance. Before dinner, before speeches, before anything else goes wrong. He offered his hand. Just trust me. The small band Lena had hired, former scholarship recipients now studying at Juilliard, was playing something slow and jazzy. Damien led her onto the dance floor, his hand finding hers while his other settled at her waist. They danced before at other events, but always briefly, always aware of cameras and watching eyes. This felt different, more deliberate, like he actually wanted to instead of just maintaining appearances. "You're good at this," Lena said as they moved together, his lead confident and easy to follow. "My mother insisted on ballroom lessons when I was 12, said every proper gentleman needed to know how to waltz." Damien pulled her slightly closer. "I hated every minute of it until I realized dancing was just pattern recognition set to music. After that, it made sense. Of course you reduced dancing to mathematical patterns. How else should I have approached it? Maybe by actually feeling the music instead of analyzing it." Damien was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm not good at feeling things. I'm good at understanding them. There's a difference." Before Lena could respond, the song ended, and the MC, a former program participant who'd become a nonprofit director, took the microphone to begin the formal program. The speeches went perfectly. 3 beneficiaries shared stories about how Ashford's foundation had changed their lives, and the room actually stayed quiet to listen instead of talking through presentations like they did at most charity events. When Damien gave his own speech, he was eloquent and genuine in ways that surprised even Lena, talking about responsibility and legacy and the difference between writing checks and actually caring about impact. The donations poured in. By the time they closed the live auction, they'd raised $9.3 million, $2 million more than last year's traditional gala. Lena stood at the side of the ballroom watching the total climb on the digital display, and something fierce and proud swelled in her chest. She'd done this. Taken a risk everyone said wouldn't work and turned it into the most successful fundraiser in Ashford Foundation history. "Congratulations," a voice said beside her. "You proved everyone wrong." She turned to find Marcus standing there in a tuxedo, a champagne flute in his hand, and Emma hovering a few feet behind him looking uncomfortable. Lena's entire body went cold. "What are you doing here?" "My company bought a table. We support various Manhattan charities." Marcus gestured around the ballroom. "Quite the event. Very different from your usual work." "My usual work was 3 years ago. Things change." Clearly, his eyes traveled over her dress, a midnight blue gown that Vivian had selected specially for tonight. "You've changed too. Dating a billionaire will do that." The implication was clear and cutting, that she'd traded up, that she was using Damien the same way Marcus probably thought she'd used his connections. "Did you come over here just to insult me? Or did you actually have something to say?" Lena asked. "I came to apologize." "Emma and I both did." Marcus glanced back at Emma, who still hadn't approached. "What happened between us was wrong. The way it happened was wrong. We should have told you sooner, handled it better. You should have not slept with my sister while you were engaged to me. That would have been better." "Fair point." Marcus had the grace to look ashamed. "I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry, for whatever that's worth." "It's worth nothing." Lena kept her voice level despite the anger churning in her stomach. "You didn't just break my heart, Marcus. You destroyed my business, my family, relationships, my entire life. And now you show up at my event, the biggest success I've had in years, and think an apology makes us even? I don't think we're even. I just wanted you to know I regret how things ended. You regret getting caught. There's a difference." Lena started to walk away, then stopped and turned back. "Tell Emma she doesn't get to apologize. She doesn't get to feel better by saying sorry. She made her choice. She can live with it." She walked away before Marcus could respond, her heart pounding and her hands shaking with suppressed rage. The gala was still in full swing around her. Donors mingling, beneficiaries sharing stories, waiters circulating with champagne. But all Lena could feel was the fury of seeing Marcus's face and remembering everything he'd destroyed. She found a quiet hallway near the service entrance and leaned against the wall, trying to breathe through the anger. "Hey!" Damien appeared a moment later, concern clear in his expression. "I saw you talking to someone. Then you looked like you were about to either cry or commit murder. What happened?" "Marcus is here. With Emma. They apologized." "Did you want them to apologize?" "No. I wanted them to not exist in my life anymore. But apparently I can't even have that." Lena pressed her palms against her eyes. "I'm fine. I just needed a minute." "You're not fine. You're shaking. Because I'm angry. Angry that he gets to show up here and act like saying sorry fixes what he did. Angry that seeing him still affects me this much. She dropped her hands. I should be over this by now. It's been months. I should be able to see him without wanting to scream. Damien was quiet for a moment, studying her face. Then he said, "Come with me." "Where?" "Somewhere that isn't here." He led her through the service corridors, past surprised catering staff, up a stairwell that led to the hotel's upper floors. They ended up on a balcony that overlooked Central Park, the November air cold enough to make Lena shiver in her sleeveless dress. Damien shrugged off his tuxedo jacket and draped it over her shoulders before she could protest. "Better?" he asked. "I'm supposed to be downstairs monitoring the event, making sure everything runs smoothly. Jessica is downstairs monitoring. The catering manager has everything under control. Right now you're up here because you looked like you were going to break. And I'm not letting that happen in front of 300 donors." The blunt honesty was so perfectly Damien that Lena almost laughed. "Always so romantic." "Romance is inefficient. Honesty is better." He leaned against the balcony railing. "Talk to me. Actually talk, not the performance version." Lena wrapped his jacket tighter around herself and stared out at the city lights. Seeing Marcus reminded me that everyone was right. My business only succeeded because of his connections. The moment he left, it all fell apart, which means I wasn't actually good at what I did. I was just good at using his network. That's garbage. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you organized tonight's gala. You created something genuinely innovative that raised $2 million more than a traditional event. You did that with your skills and vision, not anyone's connections. Damien turned to face her. Marcus gave you access to clients. He didn't give you talent. Don't confuse the two. You're only saying that because you hired me. I hired you because you're good. If you weren't, I would have fired you weeks ago regardless of our arrangement. I don't keep incompetent people around just to be nice. The simple certainty in his voice made something in Lena's chest ache. She'd spent months believing she was a failure, that losing Marcus meant losing her worth. Hearing Damien say otherwise with such conviction felt like being given permission to believe in herself again. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what? For not letting me spiral. For getting me out of there before I did something stupid." "You wouldn't have done anything stupid. You're too controlled for that." Damien checked his phone. "We should head back soon. I'm supposed to give closing remarks in 20 minutes. But neither of them moved. The balcony was quiet except for distant sounds of traffic and the muted noise of the gala below. The city stretched out around them, millions of lights, millions of people, all living their own complicated lives. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said. "Sure." "Why did you really hire me? And don't give me the practiced answer about changing your public image. Tell me the truth." Damien was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Because you asked for help without expecting me to fix everything. You sat at my table and asked for 2 minutes, not money or connections or any of the things people usually want from me. You just needed someone to see you when everyone else was looking away. That's not really an answer." "Yes, it is. I hired you because I understood what that felt like, being invisible while everyone watches." He turned to look at her directly. "After my wife died, everyone saw the grieving widower, or the ruthless CEO, or the single father struggling with parenting. Nobody just saw me. You looked at me in that restaurant like I was a person instead of a solution to your problem. That's rare." The honesty in his words hit Lena harder than she expected. This wasn't the controlled billionaire or the calculating businessman. This was just Damien, someone as lonely as she was, just better at hiding it. "I see you now," Lena said softly. "The real version, not the performance." "I know, that's the problem." Before Lena could ask what he meant, Damien's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and swore quietly. "We need to go. They're about to start the closing program." They headed back downstairs, slipping into the ballroom just as Jessica was introducing Damien for his final remarks. He walked to the stage with practiced confidence, and Lena watched from the side as he thanked donors and organizers and beneficiaries with genuine warmth. When he mentioned her by name, and special recognition to Lena Hartwell, whose vision and dedication made tonight possible, the room erupted in applause. Lena felt her face heat as hundreds of people turned to look at her, their expressions ranging from impressed to envious to calculating. After the speeches ended and the formal program concluded, the crowd shifted into mingling mode. Lena found herself surrounded by donors wanting to discuss future events, board members offering congratulations, and vendors asking for her contact information. By the time she extracted herself from the last conversation, it was nearly midnight and the ballroom was mostly empty. Staff were breaking down tables and collecting abandoned champagne flutes. The industrial lighting that had looked so dramatic during the event now just looked harsh and utilitarian. Lena stood in the middle of the floor, exhausted and exhilarated, watching her vision get dismantled piece by piece. "You did it," Jessica said, appearing beside her with a tablet full of final numbers. 9.4 million total. Best fundraising results in foundation history. The number felt surreal. 9.4 million. 9.4 million. Plus about 30 requests for meetings with you from organizations wanting you to plan their events. Jessica smiled, the first genuine smile Lena had ever seen from her. "You're officially in demand now. Congratulations." After Jessica left, Lena finally let herself feel the full weight of what she'd accomplished. This event had been her chance to prove she could succeed on her own merit, and she'd exceeded every expectation. The event planner who'd been broke and desperate 2 months ago had just executed the most successful charity gala in Manhattan. Ready to go home? Damien appeared, having shed his bow tie and looking tired but satisfied. "More than ready. My feet are killing me." Robert drove them back through Manhattan, the city quieter now in the post-midnight hours. Lena leaned against the window, watching buildings slide past while exhaustion settled into her bones. "You should be proud," Damien said. "Tonight was exceptional." Tonight was terrifying. I kept waiting for something to go catastrophically wrong. But it didn't, because you planned for every contingency and executed flawlessly. He was quiet for a moment. "I meant what I said in my speech. Your vision made the difference. You paid me $250,000. You'd say that regardless." "No, I wouldn't. If the event had been mediocre, I would have said it was competent and moved on. But it wasn't mediocre. It was actually impressive." Damien turned to look at her. "You're good at this, Lena. Better than you give yourself credit for." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. "Thank you." Robert pulled up outside her building in Astoria. Damien surprised her by getting out of the car with her, walking her to the entrance despite the late hour. "You don't have to do this," Lena said. "I'm perfectly capable of walking to my own door." "I know, but I want to." He stopped at the building entrance, hands in his pockets. "Can I tell you something?" "Sure." "Tonight when I saw you talking to your ex, I wanted to go over there and make him leave. Not because it would look good for our arrangement, but because I hated seeing you upset." Damien's expression was unreadable in the dim streetlight. "That's not in the contract, caring whether you're upset. But I do anyway." Lena's heart stuttered. "Damien, I know what we agreed to. I know this is supposed to be a business arrangement, but somewhere in the last 2 months, it stopped feeling like business." He took a step closer. "And I think you feel it too. We can't do this. The contract specifically says, forget the contract. I'm not talking about legal obligations. I'm talking about the fact that I think about you when you're not around. That I look forward to events because it means time with you. That watching you succeed tonight made me prouder than any of my own business achievements." The confession hung between them, dangerous and real, and everything Lena had been trying not to acknowledge. "This is a bad idea," she said, even as her heart raced. "You hired me to perform a relationship, not to have one. If we blur those lines, the lines are already blurred. They've been blurred since you met Sophie, maybe since that first dinner at Aurelio's." Damien reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture achingly gentle. "I'm not asking you to make any decisions tonight. I'm just telling you the truth, that this stopped being fake for me a while ago." Lena should have stepped back, should have reminded him about professional boundaries and contractual obligations, should have protected herself from getting hurt again. Instead, she closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, questioning, giving him a chance to pull away. But then Damien's hands came up to frame her face, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like falling and flying at the same time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lena pressed her forehead against his and tried to make sense of what just happened. "This complicates everything," she whispered. "I know. We have 3 more months on the contract, 3 months of pretending in public while whatever this is happens in private." "I know that too. And when it ends, When we stage the breakup, this is going to hurt. Damien pulled back enough to look at her, his dark eyes searching her face. What if it doesn't end? What if we skip the staged breakup and just see where this goes? The suggestion should have terrified her, should have sent her running back to the safety of clear boundaries and business arrangements. But standing there on her building stoop in a designer gown with Damien Ashford's jacket around her shoulders and the taste of him still on her lips, Lena found she wasn't scared at all. "Okay," she said. "Let's see where this goes." Damien smiled, really smiled, warm and genuine and completely unguarded. "Okay." He kissed her again, softer this time, before stepping back toward the waiting car. "Get some sleep. We're having brunch with Sophie tomorrow. She's been asking about you all week." "Tomorrow?" "Damien, it's already tomorrow. It's past midnight. Then later today, 11 o'clock. I'll send Robert." He drove away, leaving Lena standing on her stoop feeling like her entire world had shifted on its axis. Inside her apartment, she found 17 text messages from Maya, all some variation of "call me" and "how did it go," and "I saw the donation total, holy shit." Lena called her despite the late hour. "Tell me everything," Maya demanded immediately. "The gala, the donors, all of it." "We raised $9.4 million. "I know, I saw it online. That's incredible. But what happened with you and Damien? Jessica Park posted a photo of you two dancing, and you looked way too comfortable for a fake relationship." Lena sat on her couch, still wearing the gown, and told Maya everything. Marcus showing up, the conversation on the balcony, Damien's confession, the kiss. When she finished, Maya was silent for a long moment. "Say something," Lena prompted. "I'm trying to figure out if I should be happy for you or worried about you." "What does that mean?" "It means you just admitted you have real feelings for a guy who hired you to fake date him. A guy who's a billionaire with a daughter and a dead wife and enough emotional baggage to fill Central Park. That's either the start of something real or the setup for devastating heartbreak." "I know the risks. Do you?" "Because 2 months ago you were crying in your apartment about Marcus. Now you're falling for someone even more complicated. What happens when this doesn't work out?" "Maybe it will work out." "Lena, I know it's risky. I know it's probably stupid. But for the first time since everything fell apart, I feel like I'm actually living instead of just surviving. Doesn't that count for something?" Maya sighed. "Yeah, it does. Just promise me you'll be careful. That you won't lose yourself in this the way you lost yourself in Marcus." "I promise." After they hung up, Lena finally changed out of the gown and washed off her makeup. But sleep wouldn't come. She lay in bed replaying the kiss, Damien's confession, the feeling of his hands cradling her face like she was something precious. Somewhere between fake and real, performance and truth, she'd fallen for the man she was supposed to be pretending to date. And the terrifying part was she didn't want to stop falling. Brunch with Sophie turned into an entire Sunday afternoon that felt dangerously close to what Lena imagined a real family might look like. They made pancakes in Damien's enormous kitchen. Or rather, Lena and Sophie made pancakes while Damien attempted to help and mostly just got in the way. Sophie told elaborate stories about her classmates and showed Lena the chapter book she was reading, the same one Lena had given her weeks ago. "I'm on page 73, Sophie announced proudly. "Mary just found the key to the garden." "That's my favorite part," Lena said, "when she realizes the garden isn't actually dead, just sleeping. Like the princess in the story, except it's plants instead of a person." Sophie climbed onto the counter, despite Damien telling her not to, reaching for the chocolate chips. "Can we put these in the pancakes?" "Absolutely not," Damien said. At the same time, Lena said, "Sure. Why not?" Sophie grinned. "Lena said yes, so that's the rule." "That's not how rules work," Damien protested, but he was already handing over the chocolate chips with a resigned expression that said he'd lost this battle before it started. They ate pancakes on the living room floor, Sophie's idea, while watching a movie about talking animals that Lena would have found insufferable if she'd been watching alone. But Sophie's running commentary made everything better, and the way Damien quietly explained plot points his daughter already understood showed a patience Lena had never seen in any boardroom. Around 3, Sophie fell asleep curled against Damien's side, chocolate smeared on her cheek, and the stuffed rabbit clutched in one hand. "She does this every Sunday," Damien said quietly, carefully adjusting his position so Sophie's head rested more comfortably. "Gets herself completely worn out, then crashes hard. She's sweet. Lena pulled a blanket over the sleeping girl. You're good with her. Better than you think. I'm terrified with her. Every single day I'm terrified I'm doing something wrong that will mess her up permanently. That's called being a parent. Everyone feels that way. How would you know? You said you're never having kids. Lena thought about that. I said that because I was scared. Same reason you think you're doing everything wrong. Fear makes us doubt ourselves even when we're doing fine. Damien looked at her over Sophie's sleeping form, something unreadable in his expression. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being scared all the time. The moment stretched between them, comfortable and dangerous at once. This felt real in ways the contract had never covered, sitting in his living room while his daughter slept between them, discussing parenting and fear like they were actually building something together. Lena's phone buzzed, shattering the intimacy. She glanced at it and felt her stomach drop. Her mother's name on the screen. A text message. Your father and I would like to see you. Thanksgiving is coming up and we need to discuss family plans. Family plans. Which meant Emma and Marcus would be there, and Lena's parents expected her to show up and pretend everything was fine. Problem? Damien asked, noticing her expression. My mother wants to talk about Thanksgiving. Lena set the phone down without responding. Apparently it's time for the annual family gathering where everyone pretends the past year didn't happen. You don't have to go. They're my family. I can't just not show up. Yes, you can. Family is a choice, not an obligation. Damien carefully shifted Sophie's weight, settling her more comfortably. You don't owe them your presence just because you share DNA, says the man who cut off his parents completely. Exactly, and I've never regretted it. He looked at her directly. Your sister betrayed you. Your parents took her side. You don't owe them forgiveness or attendance at holiday dinners. You owe yourself peace. The words landed hard because they were true. Lena had spent months trying to be the bigger person, trying to maintain family relationships despite everything. But what had that gotten her? More pain, more guilt, more expectations that she somehow needed to fix what other people had broken. What would I even say to them? Lena asked. That you're busy, that you have other plans, that you're choosing yourself for once instead of making everyone else comfortable. My mother will guilt trip me for weeks. Let her. You survived losing your business and your fiancé. You can survive your mother's disappointment. Before Lena could respond, Sophie stirred awake, blinking up at them with sleepy confusion. Did I fall asleep again? You did, Damien confirmed. But it's okay. We were just talking. Sophie sat up, rubbing her eyes. About what? About how families can be complicated, Lena said honestly. Like how my mom died and now it's just me and Dad? Sophie's directness was startling. That's complicated. Yeah, like that. My friend Mia says it's sad that I don't have a mom, but I told her I have Dad and that's enough. Sophie looked between them. And now I kind of have Lena too, right? So that's even better. The casual way she said it, like Lena was already a permanent fixture instead of a temporary arrangement, made Lena's throat tight. She glanced at Damien, who looked equally caught off guard. Right, Damien said carefully. Lena's here now. Good, because I like her better than Dad's old girlfriend from when I was little. She was mean and smelled like flowers that were too strong. I didn't have a girlfriend when you were little, Damien said, confused. Yes, you did. The blonde lady who came over sometimes and tried to make me call her Aunt Rebecca. I hated her. Understanding dawned on Damien's face. That wasn't my girlfriend. That was a business associate your grandmother tried to set me up with. And we went on exactly one dinner before I told her to stop trying. Oh, well, I still didn't like her. Sophie turned to Lena. You're way better. You don't smell weird and you actually talk to me like I'm a person. That's a pretty low bar, Lena said, but she was smiling. The rest of the afternoon passed in comfortable domesticity. They played board games Sophie insisted on winning, made popcorn when she declared herself hungry again an hour after pancakes, and watched another movie while rain started pattering against the windows. Around 6, Damien ordered Chinese food, and they ate straight from the containers while Sophie told them about a boy in her class who ate paste and thought no one noticed. That's disgusting, Lena said. I know, and the teacher pretends she doesn't see it, but she totally does. She just doesn't want to deal with telling his parents their kid eats art supplies. Damien nearly choked on his lo mein. How do you know that's what she's thinking? Because that's what I'd be thinking if I was her. Some things are too weird to explain to parents. After dinner, when Sophie was thoroughly exhausted and convinced to actually get ready for bed, Damien walked Lena to the elevator. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for today, for being good with her. I like spending time with her. She's funny and honest and somehow wiser than most adults I know. She likes you too, which is rare. She's usually very suspicious of new people." Damien leaned against the wall, looking more relaxed than Lena had ever seen him. "Stay tonight. Not for anything. Just stay. It's late, it's raining, and we have that investor breakfast tomorrow anyway. You could sleep in the guest room." The invitation was simple and complicated at once. Staying meant crossing another line, blurring more boundaries, making this feel even more real. "Okay," Lena said. "I'll stay." Damien's expression softened. "Okay." The guest room was bigger than Lena's entire apartment, with a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud, and windows overlooking Central Park. Damien lent her clothes to sleep in, a soft t-shirt and sweatpants that were too big but comfortable. She should have fallen asleep immediately after the exhausting weekend. Instead, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about Sophie's casual assumption that Lena was already part of their family, about Damien's invitation to stay, about how the fake relationship had transformed into something terrifyingly real. A soft knock on the door broke through her thoughts. "Come in," Lena called. Damien appeared, still dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. "Can't sleep?" "Too much on my mind." "Me too." He sat on the edge of the bed, careful to maintain distance. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "When my wife died, I convinced myself I was better off alone, that Sophie and I were enough, and letting anyone else in would just complicate things or end in more loss." He paused. "And then you sat down at my table in that restaurant and asked for 2 minutes, and I've been trying to figure out ever since why I said yes." "Did you figure it out?" "Yeah, I said yes because you reminded me that being alone isn't the same as being protected. That closing yourself off from risk also means closing yourself off from everything good." Damien looked at her directly. "You made me want to stop being alone." Lena sat up, her heart hammering. "Damien, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just telling you the truth. That this stopped being an arrangement for me weeks ago. That I look forward to seeing you not because of the contract, but because being around you makes everything less heavy." He stood up. "Think about that. And think about whether you want this to be real or if you'd rather keep pretending." He left before she could respond, closing the door quietly behind him. Lena lay back down, Damien's words echoing in her head. She'd spent so long protecting herself from getting hurt again that she'd forgotten what it felt like to actually want something, to want someone. And she wanted Damien, not his money or his connections or the stability he represented, just him, the man who read his daughter bedtime stories, who sent her tea because she mentioned hating coffee, who was scared of failing at fatherhood despite doing it better than most people managed with far fewer obstacles. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it just felt true. The investor breakfast the next morning went smoothly, but Lena barely remembered any of it. She smiled at the right moments, made small talk with wealthy strangers, and performed the role of supportive girlfriend while her mind spun with everything Damien had said the night before. Afterward, he had back-to-back meetings all day. Lena went back to her apartment and tried to focus on work. She had 3 new event proposals to draft and vendor contracts to review, but concentration was impossible. Finally, around 3, she texted Maya, "Can you come over? I need to talk." Maya arrived 20 minutes later with coffee and the kind of concerned expression that meant she already knew something was wrong. "Okay, talk," Maya said, settling on Lena's couch. "What happened?" Lena told her everything. The confession on her stoop after the gala, the kiss, spending Sunday with Sophie, Damien's late-night admission. When she finished, Maya was quiet for a long time. "So let me make sure I understand," Maya finally said. "You started fake dating a billionaire for money. Then you caught actual feelings. Then he caught actual feelings. And now you're both pretending to fake date while actually real dating, except you haven't officially acknowledged that the arrangement changed. When you say it like that, it sounds ridiculous." "It is ridiculous. It's also kind of beautiful in a completely insane way." Maya sipped her coffee. "The question is, what do you want to happen next?" "I don't know." I'm terrified of getting hurt again, of trusting someone and having them destroy me the way Marcus did. Damien isn't Marcus. I know that, but what if I'm wrong? What if I'm seeing what I want to see instead of what's actually there? Maya set down her coffee and looked at Lena seriously. Here's what I know. Marcus made you feel small. He took credit for your success, used your connections, and then blamed you when things fell apart. Damien has spent 2 months actively building you up, hiring you for real work, defending you to people like Catherine, celebrating your success at the gala. Those aren't the actions of someone using you. But what if... Stop. You can what if yourself into paralysis, or you can take a risk on something real. Which one feels worse? The risk of getting hurt, or the certainty of always wondering what might have been? The question hit home. Lena had spent months playing it safe, protecting herself, avoiding anything that might cause more pain. But safety had just meant loneliness, isolation, missing out on Sophie's laughter and Damien's rare smiles, and the feeling of actually building something instead of just surviving. I want this to be real, Lena admitted. I want to stop pretending and just let it be whatever it is. Then tell him that. What if he changed his mind? What if last night was just a moment and now he's having second thoughts? There's only one way to find out. Lena pulled out her phone and stared at Damien's contact information. Her thumb hovered over the call button. Then she hit it before she could chicken out. He answered on the second ring. Hey, everything okay? Can we talk in person? I'm in meetings until 7. Can it wait until... No, it can't wait. Lena stood up, suddenly certain. I need to say something, and if I don't say it now, I'm going to lose my nerve. There was a pause, then... Jessica, reschedule everything after 4. Something came up. His voice returned to normal volume. I'll be home in 20 minutes. Meet me there? I'll be there. Lena hung up and looked at Maya, who was grinning. Go, Maya said, before you spiral into another what-if session. The ride to Damien's building felt like it took hours instead of 20 minutes. Lena's stomach churned with nerves, her prepared speech evaporating from her mind every time she tried to practice it. Robert gave her a knowing look when he dropped her off. Good luck, Ms. Hartwell. That obvious? I've been driving Mr. Ashford for 8 years. I've never seen him leave work early for anyone until you. The observation steadied her somehow. She rode the elevator up, and Damien was already waiting at his door. Come in, he said, stepping aside. The apartment was quiet. Sophie still at school, the space feeling bigger without her energy filling it. Lena stood in the living room, suddenly unsure how to start. You said you needed to talk, Damien prompted, his expression guarded. I've been thinking about what you said, about this being real instead of pretend. Lena forced herself to look at him directly. And you were right. This stopped being fake for me too. Probably around the time I met Sophie, maybe before that. Okay. Damien's voice was carefully neutral, giving nothing away. I'm terrified, Lena continued, terrified of trusting someone again, of letting someone see all the broken parts and hoping they won't use them against me. Marcus destroyed me, and I spent months putting myself back together. The idea of handing someone else that power again makes me want to run. But I don't want to run from you. I want to stay and see what this becomes. I want Sunday afternoons with Sophie and late-night conversations, and someone who sends me tea because they actually listen when I talk. Her voice cracked slightly. I want this to be real. Not an arrangement or a performance, just real. Damien crossed the space between them in 3 steps, his hands framing her face the same way they had when they'd kissed. Thank God. Because I've been going crazy trying to figure out how to tell you I wanted to tear up the contract and start over. Start over? No fake relationship, no performance, just you and me figuring this out together, whatever this is. Relief flooded through Lena so intensely she almost laughed. What about the remaining events? The contract technically has 2 more months. I'll pay you out the full amount regardless. Consider it payment for the work you've already done, which exceeded every expectation. But the relationship part, that stops being a business transaction right now. So we're just dating, like normal people. We're dating, though I don't think anything about us qualifies as normal. Damien smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Is that okay? Instead of answering, Lena kissed him. This time there was no hesitation, No wondering if it was allowed or appropriate. This time it was just honest. Two people who'd found each other in the middle of their respective disasters and decided to stop pretending. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against hers. I should probably tell you that Sophie's been planning our wedding for 2 weeks. She has a whole notebook full of ideas. We've been real dating for approximately 30 seconds, and your daughter is already planning a wedding? She's very efficient, gets it from me. Damien pulled back enough to look at her. But seriously, she's going to have questions about what this means, about whether you're staying or if this is temporary. I need to know how to answer that. The question was fair and terrifying. Lena thought about it honestly. Tell her I'm staying as long as she and you want me here, that I can't promise forever because nobody can, but I can promise I'm not running away the first time things get hard. That works. Damien kissed her forehead. Fair warning, she's going to be insufferable about this. She's going to tell everyone at school, probably draw family portraits that include you, and definitely ask when we're getting married at the most inappropriate times. I can handle insufferable. I organized a charity gala for 300 donors in 2 months. A 7-year-old can't be worse than that. You clearly haven't experienced Sophie in full matchmaking mode. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, really talking, about the things they'd been avoiding while maintaining the performance. Damien told her about the years after his wife died, how he'd thrown himself into work to avoid dealing with grief and nearly destroyed himself in the process. Lena told him about growing up always competing with Emma, always feeling like the less favored daughter, and how Marcus had initially felt like validation that she was worthy of being chosen. You were always worthy, Damien said. You just kept looking for external validation instead of recognizing your own value. That's very therapist of you. I've spent 18 months in therapy dealing with grief and single parenting. Some of it stuck. He pulled her closer on the couch. Point stands, though. You're brilliant at what you do. The gala proved that. You don't need my contract or anyone else's approval to be successful. The contract helped, though, gave me stability when I needed it. The contract gave you opportunity. You did the rest. Damien checked his watch. Sophie gets home in an hour. We should probably figure out how to tell her about this change. What do we even say? Remember how we were fake dating? Well, now it's real? I was thinking more along the lines of Lena and I decided we want to spend more time together, so she'll be around more often. Less complicated, more age-appropriate. You've clearly thought about this. I've been thinking about it since the night of the gala. I just wasn't sure you felt the same way. Sophie's reaction when she got home was exactly as dramatic as Damien predicted. She literally jumped up and down in the entryway, then demanded to know if this meant Lena would be at their apartment all the time now. Not all the time, Lena said, but more often, if that's okay with you. It's very okay. Can you stay for dinner? I can stay for dinner. And tomorrow? Sophie, Damien warned. Lena has her own apartment and her own life. She doesn't have to be here every day. But she could be if she wanted to, right? That's up to her. Sophie turned to Lena with pleading eyes that were impossible to resist. Will you at least stay tonight? We're having Taco Tuesday, even though it's Monday, because I asked nicely. Lena looked at Damien, who shrugged with an expression that said he'd lost this battle before it started. Taco Monday sounds perfect, Lena said. The next few weeks settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable and real. Lena kept her apartment. The independence mattered to her, proof that she could stand on her own, but spent most evenings at Damien's place. She attended Sophie's school events and helped with homework. She and Damien went on actual dates instead of contractual appearances, discovering they both loved terrible action movies and argued constantly about the best pizza in Manhattan. Work flourished. The success of the charity gala led to 5 new contracts, including 2 major corporate events and a nonprofit fundraiser that would stretch Lena's creative skills. She hired an assistant, a recent graduate named Alex who was hungry and talented, and started looking at actual office space instead of working from her studio apartment. Damien's company launched a new venture capital fund focused on supporting minority-owned businesses, and Lena helped organize the announcement event. Watching him speak about economic opportunity and systemic barriers with genuine passion reminded her why she'd been drawn to him in the first place. He wasn't just wealthy. He actually cared about using that wealth for something beyond accumulation. Thanksgiving approached, and Lena's mother increased the pressure to attend family dinner. The texts became more frequent, more insistent, laced with guilt about abandoning family during the holidays. Finally, Lena called her. Mom, I'm not coming to Thanksgiving. Lena, this is ridiculous. Emma feels terrible about what happened. She wants to apologize properly. And Marcus has moved on. He's dating someone new. There's no reason for this continued drama. The reason is that Emma slept with my fiancé while helping me plan our wedding. That's not drama, Mom. That's betrayal. And the fact that you keep minimizing it tells me you don't actually understand why I'm upset. I understand you're being stubborn and holding grudges. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. Lena took a breath. I'm spending Thanksgiving with Damien and Sophie. I'm choosing to be with people who actually value me instead of people who expect me to make myself small for their comfort. So you're choosing your boyfriend's family over your own? I'm choosing peace over obligation. And if you can't understand that, then we don't have much else to talk about. She hung up before her mother could respond, her hands shaking, but her conscience clear. Damien found her sitting on his balcony afterwards, staring out at Central Park. How did it go? He asked. I told her no. Actually said it out loud instead of making excuses. How does it feel? Terrifying, liberating, like I just jumped off a cliff and I'm not sure if I'll fly or crash. Damien sat beside her. For what it's worth, I think you'll fly. You've been crashing for months. It's time for something different. Thanksgiving ended up being quieter than Lena expected. Just the three of them in Damien's apartment, cooking a meal that was slightly burned in places and perfect in others. Sophie made place cards with elaborate drawings, putting Lena between her and Damien at the table. They went around sharing what they were grateful for. Sophie said her dad and Lena and her friend Mia, who shared her crayons. Damien said his daughter and the woman who'd unexpectedly walked into his life and made everything better. When it was Lena's turn, she looked at the two people sitting with her and felt something shift into place. I'm grateful for second chances, she said, for people who see you at your worst and choose to stay anyway. For learning that family isn't just about biology, it's about who shows up. Sophie reached over and squeezed her hand. We showed up. Yeah, Lena said, her throat tight. You did. That night, after Sophie went to bed, Damien and Lena sat on the couch with wine and leftover pie, comfortable in the quiet. Can I ask you something? Lena said. Always. What happens next? With us, I mean. We're past the contract, past the performance, but we've never actually talked about what we're building toward. Damien was quiet for a moment, considering. Honestly, I don't know. I haven't done this in years, the actual relationship part. With my wife, everything was easy and natural. We met in college, fell in love, got married, no complications. And then she died, and everything became complicated. Yeah. He set down his wine glass. I spent years convincing myself I was fine alone, that Sophie and I were enough. And we are. But there's a difference between being enough and being whole. What's the difference? Enough means surviving. Whole means actually living. Damien turned to face her. You make me want to live again, not just go through the motions of work and parenting, but actually engage with things, take risks, feel something besides responsibility. Lena's eyes stung. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. It's just true. He pulled her closer. So what happens next is we keep doing this, building something real without pretending we have all the answers, making mistakes and fixing them, letting Sophie plan imaginary weddings while we figure out what we actually want. What do you want? I want you here, not performing, not contracted, just here. I want Sophie to keep drawing family portraits that include you. I want to wake up and know you're part of my life, instead of wondering when you'll leave. He paused. Eventually, I want more than that. But for now, this is enough. More than what? More than dating? More than separate apartments and careful boundaries. But that's a conversation for when we're both ready. Damien kissed her temple. For now, I'm just grateful you're here. They stayed like that for a long time, the city glittering beyond the windows, comfortable in the certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it together. 3 months later, on a February afternoon when snow was falling soft and steady over Central Park, Lena moved the last box into Damien's apartment. Her apartment, their apartment now, though the adjustment still felt surreal. Sophie helped unpack, chattering constantly about where Lena's books should go and whether they could paint the guest room a different color now that it would be Lena's office. This is perfect, Sophie declared. arranging Lena's collection of vintage teacups on a shelf. Now, you're really part of the family. I've been part of the family for months, Lena pointed out. I know, but now it's official. You live here. That means you can't leave even if you get mad at Dad for being bossy. I'm not bossy, Damien called from the kitchen where he was unpacking Lena's cookware. I'm organized. That's the same thing, Sophie yelled back. Lena laughed, watching this little girl who'd become so precious to her bicker with her father about semantics. This wasn't the life she'd imagined when she sat down at Damien's table that night in Aurelio's. She'd been looking for 2 minutes of dignity, a brief escape from humiliation. Instead, she'd found something permanent, something real. That evening, after Sophie went to bed, Lena stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at Manhattan. Damien came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Any regrets? He asked. About moving in? No. About everything else? Also no. She leaned back against him. I keep thinking about the night we met. How desperate I was, how broken I felt. I thought asking you for help was the lowest point of my life. Was it? No. The lowest point was believing I deserved what happened, that Marcus leaving meant I was worthless. Lena turned in his arms. You helped me remember I was worth more than how other people treated me. You did that yourself. I just gave you space to realize it. You gave me a lot more than space. You gave me stability when I was drowning, purpose when I felt useless, a family when mine fell apart. She reached up and touched his face. You gave me a reason to stop just surviving and start actually living. Damien kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, he said quietly. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was scared. Scared of losing this, scared of wanting too much, scared of everything that comes with actually letting someone in. But I'm done being scared. I love you, Lena, completely. The words settled into Lena's chest like coming home. I love you too. Even when you're bossy and overprotective and trying to fix everything with spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are very effective problem-solving tools. See? Bossy. But she was smiling. They stood there in the quiet of their apartment, their home now, while snow continued falling outside and the city glowed with a million lights. Lena thought about the journey that had brought her here, the humiliation at Aurelio's, the desperate contract, the slow transformation from performance to reality. All the moments when she could have walked away, protected herself, chosen safety over risk. She was glad she hadn't. Because this, standing in Damien's arms while Sophie slept down the hall, surrounded by the life they were building together, this was worth every terrifying moment of uncertainty. The fake relationship had become real. The business arrangement had transformed into love. The broken woman who'd asked for 2 minutes had found something permanent. And in the end, that was the truth Lena held on to. Sometimes the best things in life started with moments of desperate courage. Sometimes asking for help led to finding home. Sometimes the lowest points became launch pads for entirely new beginnings. She'd walked into that restaurant looking for dignity and found a family instead. That seemed like a pretty good trade. 6 months later, Sophie served as flower girl at a small ceremony in Central Park, carrying a basket of petals and wearing a dress she'd helped design. Maya stood as Lena's maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony despite her earlier predictions of disaster. Robert gave Lena away, since her own father had declined to attend after she refused to invite Emma. The ceremony was simple and honest, with vows that acknowledged their unconventional beginning and promised an authentic future. When Damien kissed his bride, really kissed her, not the careful performance version, Sophie cheered loud enough that tourists stopped to watch. The reception was small, just close friends and the colleagues who'd become family. No elaborate gala, no performance, just honest celebration of something real. As Lena danced with her new husband while Sophie attempted to teach their guests her own made-up dance moves, she caught sight of her reflection in the venue's windows. She looked happy. Actually happy, not just pretending. The woman who'd once been so desperate she crashed a stranger's dinner had found her way home. Not to the family who'd rejected her, but to the one she'd chosen, the one that chose her back. And that, Lena thought as Damien spun her across the dance floor while their daughter laughed and their friends celebrated, made all the difference. Sometimes you had to lose everything to find what actually mattered. Sometimes the worst moments led to the best outcomes. Sometimes fake became real in the most unexpected ways. Lena had learned that the hard way, but she wouldn't change a single moment of it.